Fantasy Astronomy.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Sunday, August the 25th, 2024. I'm your host, Dan Train. Join me today, Zachary Burgess.
Fantasy Astronomy.
Robert Kemp.
If Patrick Moore was to
We've used to be fantasy.
present
Put
that.
a wizard hat.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. If you could bring Patrick Moore back from the dead, that is.
Well, I mean, that's the start of the fantasy, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah,
That's to be an undead astronomer.
be there.
/ xylophone player.
Yeah.
That's how you resurrect him.
/ games master.
Yeah,
/ Games Master. Well, is that part of the ritual to...
to play a certain xylophone tune in a church.
Well, and obviously the tune has to be some kind of video game song.
Yeah.
And it has to be under the sky at night.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Perhaps the church doesn't have a roof. That might help.
It's a ruin church.
Yeah.
What time was the sky at night on? Like 3 a.m. or something? It would have to be then. Or 2. It was... No, how late was it?
Oh, it must have been like pretty late. I don't really
well
know.
past midnight, I remember.
I don't think I ever saw it. I think I saw like one of the reimaginings of it when like Dara O'Brien was doing it or something.
Well, no, he did the... That's not... Well, I don't think those were Sky at Night, were they? That was just when they started doing astronomy programs again for a while.
It's usually Brian Cox, isn't it? But I can't see him like in a shed, like peering through a telescope.
Well,
He needs
that'll
to be
be
standing on top of a mountain with a drone flying around.
well, yeah. That'd be more of a cutaway to him. And let's go to Brian Cox to get his opinion on what we're looking at. Everyone will die.
Is he like a doomsday prophet or something?
He looks really cheerful, right? But he's like isn't that the joke about him that he always talks about, like heat, death of the universe?
Right, in a really cheerful manner.
Everyone will die. Astronomy. You ever done much astronomy? Looking through telescopes and stuff?
It's too
No, I
expensive. I mean, to own a telescope. I'm sure there's cheaper ways that you could like have a session or whatever. But
I thought it had become like one of those things that had actually become like relatively affordable compared to what it used to be.
well, it's more of a matter of like, do you want the bullshit cheap level that is the reason that it's affordable, or do you
Right.
want the actual thing?
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
But is it because you can motor control your telescope?
Well, that's what makes it
Triangulate
expensive,
it?
though.
Pretty much. Well, there's some of the. I was talking about this. I know someone who's kind of into this stuff, and he's got a motor controlled telescope and stuff. And it's like he was sort of saying, yeah, it's not actually that. He did tell me what it was, and I remember thinking that's not as expensive as I thought. But also that there's like the software is like open source that a lot of like amateur astronomers use. So you just point your telescope at the thing you want to capture, and it will do a long capture of it, and then use like I guess I was about to say AI, but not really
pre-AI.
Yeah, kind of an algorithm to basically like sharpen the image based on all the images you've taken.
Yeah.
And then you just look at the image on your laptop.
On your laptop, and you go, "Wow, that's a good photo."
And you go, wow. And you're like all proud that you took that photo from your own garden instead of just getting it from the internet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
That is the satisfaction, right? Because it's like the motor will track it over the course of the period of time that you're exposing it as well. So
But I don't think that's as cool. Like, you want to actually physically look at it directly, but then, of course, that doesn't work when you're on the surface of the Earth with, like, consumer-grade equipment. That's why it has to do the, like, long time-lapse image manipulation thing to sharpen it up. Because if you're actually looking through a telescope through the atmosphere, you're just looking at a big blurry blob most of the time.
Yeah, you want it to do the sharpening, and you want it to, like... Which way round is it? It's basically dulling the contrast, isn't it? Because it's taking a long exposure. It needs to dull the contrast of the image.
Right, because each pixel would contribute so much, like, contrast of the light versus the black.
Yeah, and it needs to up the gain in the dark areas, but lower it in the bright bits, right, to make everything visible at once.
That's why if you want to do something cool with looking at things with your eyes, I guess the cooler but equally expensive version is like microscopes, right? Because
right,
that way you can look at something and you can see it.
And it might not take up so much space.
Well, yeah.
But like in both fields, no one who's actually doing anything serious is looking at anything directly anymore.
Well, no.
Right?
No.
Well, that's because we've already collected that data like hundreds of years ago. The data that you can get with just your eyes has been done to death.
But I think that is the fun part.
Yes.
Kind of.
Is that like the plot lines from like Deep Impact and Armageddon aren't really possible because some dude at a telescope somewhere is not going to go like, guys, I think we've got a problem.
Well, they do still kind of do that. Like people will like they see something that moves parallax and they're like, oh, does NASA know about this? Probably, but we should probably mention it.
Yeah, that was a weird movement. What was that about? Yeah. Maybe.
Because that's why there was one quite recently where they found like an old rocket piece or something. Like that had been lost for a while. Like
one that wasn't on the debris map.
Yeah, it wasn't on the debris map, and someone with a telescope was just like, "Oh, there's something moving. Let's report that." And then it's like, "Oh, this is where that bit of rocket went, I guess."
But they could be pretty bright because they reflect the sun, right?
Yeah, because they're like actually metal coloured instead of rock coloured.
How do they confirm that that's the bit of rocket? Do they actually have to like look at it and be like, "That's rocket shaped," or track its trajectory back?
But yes, and that as well. You just reverse engineer the trajectory. Most of the time.
How do you know what like impulse, like if it broke up or something?
Well, I mean, presumably if you look at what the piece of the rocket, so you could at least determine like what type of rocket it was, that would give you an idea to start from.
If you can get good enough, like sharp visual, I suppose, to discern the shape of it and
to read the CCP.
yeah, exactly.
just see the outline of a dead dog flying next to it.
Oh, poor old Leica. I don't think any of those space animals were left stranded in space, were they? I think they all came back down.
Well, presumably, even if they were stranded in space at the time, they won't be by now.
By now.
Because they would have all been like super low orbit, right? Because this is like early rocketry.
Yeah, I guess. They've probably returned in some form. And then those rockets probably weren't properly heat shielded, would be my guess. They wouldn't be designed for re-entry.
Well, maybe, unless they were like testing that, I suppose.
Bleh.
I know Alan Shepard didn't reach orbit, right? But did Gagarin actually get to orbit, or was he like just? I think he went round once. Does that count?
Does that count? Does that count as orbit? If it's not?
It's like when you're playing Kerbal Space Program, it only counts as an orbit if you like stabilize it to be an actual orbit.
To be an orbit, yeah.
It's like just going into space doesn't count. Yeah. Even if you go really far away, even if it's just like a ridiculous hyperbolic arc where you go straight up and straight back down, that doesn't count as orbit.
It still doesn't count. Okay.
In fact, probably if you launched directly from the launch pad and went into orbit around the moon, that wouldn't count as orbit for the planet. Even though technically the moon is orbiting the planet in Kerbal Space Program.
Right.
Because you'd never actually have been in an orbit of the planet.
You'd need a lot of fuel to do that, right? Wouldn't you? I don't know. But I guess it's doable.
Not really. It'd be like the same amount if it'd just be way less convenient because you'd have to time it super well to just have a straight shot and get that trajectory.
But then it's something you could probably adjust if you're that far in that much of an Alphator orbit.
Well, nothing's as cool as the crazy
kind of
return trajectory orbit thing, which I can never manage. I tried to do that several times in the one time I was playing Kerbal Space Program, and it was really hard. I suppose that was before
they updated all the like maneuver nodes and stuff. Makes it much easier.
But the free return trajectory is what I mean.
Yeah,
stuff's still in it. The old way of doing it, so you could do that way if you wanted, like try and hardcore it if you wanted.
What do you mean? In Kerbal Space Program 1 or 2?
Well, 1, but
no, you can choose not to use the maneuver nodes if you want and just eyeball it. Do it the original way that you do in Alpha, where you're just like wait for the moon to come over the horizon and then launch, and then that pretty much gets you on the right trajectory.
Did you see the news about the Starliner that they've given up and they're going to have those
astronauts are going to be stuck in space for like an extra 6 months?
Yeah, well, they've said that SpaceX is going to have to come and get them.
Right, when they... Yeah, I did hear something about that. When they only like supposed to be there for like...
8 days.
Yeah, not long at all.
Yeah.
Have they actually got enough supplies?
Yeah, I think
presumably.
so. I think that was all fine.
Was this like an an edge case that they planned for? It's like, well, it might this might happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe, I mean, they might be able to still send supplies on a rocket that's not rated for passengers, right? Because
Yes,
that's the thing.
Right, I see. Yes, I have. Wait, does SpaceX have manned stuff now? Then
I don't think
they've
it
got the Crew Dragon. So
has that actually finished its rating at this point.
Yeah, multiple. It's shipped up multiple people. The Crew Dragon.
And brought them back.
It's the Starliner one that I'm thinking of that still isn't rated right.
Screwed up.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and brought them back. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's the Boeing one that's in trouble.
Because Boeing be Boeing.
Apparently.
Budget cuts.
Haven't had doors come off the spaceships yet.
Well, that's what they're worried about on the way down, I suppose.
Yeah, on re-entry, just the whole heat shield just falls off.
Supposed to be something to do with the thrusters and helium leaks.
Well, that sounds bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know.
Any leak is bad, presumably, because it creates thrust if it's outside the ship.
Yeah, that's true.
In an unexpected direction.
The thing about helium is that atoms are really tiny, so it's hard to stop it leaking.
Mm. What are the engines powered by these days? Is it presumably not just straight up hydrogen? Because that would be even harder.
Which ones? The main ones on the rocket?
Well, whichever. Like the main thrusters and the.
I think they're different, aren't they? So I think the thrusters use hypergolic fuel, don't they? So where they don't need an oxidant.
The oxygen is all mixed in with it, basically.
Yeah. But that is a different thing, right? The SpaceX new one, the big Starship thing, that just uses like methane, I think. It's a different.
Presumably not just methane.
A bit more to it than that, but it is like a bit more along those lines than the average rocket fuel, I think.
So the cows go to space. Bring a cow with you, you've got fuel for a while.
Yeah, if you got fields and fields of Martian cows, you might be able to make some rocket fuel out of there.
Cool. Good to know.
Yes,
Just need to visit. It's the realistic form of dilithium crystals. Just got to find those Martian space cows. Power your trip home. Sorted. Speaking of space and stuff I've talked about previously, segue into Star Wars.
Oh, good.
I finished watching The Acolyte, which is news been cancelled. With some conspiracy of it being like, this was sort of pre-cancelled, like as it was airing. Disney were like, not so sure.
Are they saying it was cancelled because it's too woke or something like that?
I don't know what the official line is. Really, they were just like, "Yeah, we're not doing." Not even sure it's like there's an official statement about it or anything. It's just sort of like leaks and things like that. It's just saying, "Yeah, it's not coming back," which is weird because that show ends at a sort of like end of origin story start point.
Like, let's get into this now type point.
Kinda, yeah. It's like, right, we've set up, we've killed almost everyone off. Here's your. The character arc of the main of the lead character is done, or sort of has got to a new place. Let's settle up, and we'll do another series at some point. Otherwise, what the hell is the point? It's one of those shows where it's like it was okay, but otherwise, like, what are you going to do with this now? Who are these people? Clearly nothing.
We'll never know.
Yeah, clearly nothing. Or they'll bring them back as like cameos in some other series or something later. I don't know. Yeah, that show got worse. Like, I sort of enjoyed it until, like, the very end, where they sort of did a lot of the reveals of, like, here's the history of what actually happened and how this whole thing got started and yada, yada, yada. And then at that point, like, remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about the very start of it, and there were details where it's like, and I was talking about, like, could someone survive that? And, like, the rules of Star Wars and things like that. By the end of it, you're kind of just going, yeah, I don't know how this universe holds together anymore. It's one of those where it's just like, character motivations make absolutely no sense. The decisions they make are impossible to follow, and you're just like, no, why would you why are you doing that? It doesn't just...
That's just like straight up bad, right?
Yeah, it is just straight up bad. And then
why is that okay? How is that okay?
and it ends on an incredibly arbitrary decision with no like questioning that they're just like, no, we're going to have to do this. And I'm like, wait, what? Why are you going to have to do that? How is that even a thing you're suggesting as the only outcome here?
Sounds like maybe cancelling it was a good shout.
Yeah, I mean, and it has... That's not to say it was awful, like, on the way there. It's just like it ended on a bit of a bum note for me. Like, just didn't... Yeah, these are... It just... I don't know. It just seemed baffling. It's no Andor, man. It's no Andor. It's no Mando.
At least there's a second season of Andor coming. Now that's exciting. Is that this year?
Yeah, I thought it was supposed to be right near the end of this year.
Sweet.
Yeah, busy back half to the year in TV land, like with Rings of Power and Arcane, and I'm gonna have plenty of stuff to watch.
I forgot you followed through watching. You're watching all the stuff that I love, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. You're watching all the TV shows that I can't face watching.
As you put it, I am the modern crapspert.
I mean, we'll just defer to your crapspertise.
The crapspertise, yeah. I'll watch all the bad stuff in the franchises you love. It's fine. It's fine. I won't understand the good stuff, but I'll have a solid grasp of all the worst.
Actually, Disney again, technically.
Disney!
I saw the Alien film last night in the cinema.
Oh, Romulus.
Yes.
Is that any good? Because I think my position on Alien is pretty well documented here.
Is it? I can't remember. What's your position on Alien?
The first film is good.
Yes, it is.
That's kind of where it ends. Like the rest of the...
You don't like Aliens? You don't like the sequel?
No, not particularly.
I really like Aliens. That's a James Cameron joint.
Well, I think it's all right. It's like it doesn't blow me away, and then of course everything after that is trash. With the exception of Alien Isolation, the game,
right,
which is good.
So the thing about this film is its production design is like spot on, exactly the same as Alien, and it's on a set mostly on a space station, and it's basically like heavily influenced, I think, by that game.
Okay, cool.
Like it's doing everything. Well, not necessarily good because I already played that. Like I already watched Alien, and also already played that game. And it's like it expands on the world of Alien because Alien is just one ship basically, and obviously there's the planet and the alien ship and everything. But most of the aesthetics of the human world is just from that one ship in that film.
Sure.
And obviously, Alien Isolation did a really, really good job of taking those aesthetics and kind of expanding on them a bit, but being very faithful.
You're doubling down on the what's the W Corporation called? What's its actual name?
Weyland-Yutani.
Weyland, yeah, that's it. They're doubling down on that aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah, because some of that, a surprising amount of the Weyland-Yutani and all that stuff is actually from Aliens, like the logo. I'm presuming Alien is in the first film, but quite a lot of they expanded the lore quite a bit of the company and everything in Aliens. So there's actually a surprising amount that's actually from that sequel, which went really well into that game. And basically, this film just lifts and shifts that, and like in terms of like, the artistry of it or whatever, the production design. Like they made all the sets look exactly right, basically like a space station, like in that game.
Okay,
but it's just a rehash. Oh my god, everything is the fucking same as it. It's just a mashup of Alien and Aliens, basically.
Right. So it's The Force Awakens.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a video game remake of an old game series.
It's literally, that's exactly what it is. It's like,
but less enjoyable than Force Awakens, because the crap spurt in me rises up at that one and goes, "That's a good film."
I quite like Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, great. But
one thing, I think it is definitely a good comparison because I think one of the best things about Force Awakens is they cast freaking Adam Driver, right?
Yeah,
and he's awesome. And kind of similarly in this, they have a good. There's an android, a character who is an android from the beginning. What are they called? Synthetics in Alien, I think. And the actor's really good. for that bit.
Yeah, because there are androids, and synths are two different things, I think, in Alien, right? Yeah, because they're like janitor droids you're facing for most of Alien Isolation. I think they're referred to as androids, but
right. They're not in this. They're not. I don't think they're in anything apart from the game. Those things, those Working Joe things. They make those because they needed more enemies for the game, right? But it commits the criminal sin of like Rogue One of fucking bringing back dead actors. Oh my god, why?
Continuity.
Yeah, but they didn't. It's totally unnecessary, and they bring back Ian Holm, and I thought it would be for like one scene, but no, he's like a character. It's really annoying.
But is it well done though? Because I don't mind it. Because I always thought it's Tarkin, right, in Rogue One.
Tarkin, yeah.
And I think he's really well done in that. Like, not distractingly done.
Yeah, and he was sort of used sparingly, and also, but he's like already a creepy looking dude on purpose, so it kind of works. And I guess that's true here because obviously it's technically a different character because it's an android. Synth. Because he plays a synth in the original Alien, Ash, right? But in this, is different. Got a different name in this, but it's just another copy of that synth.
Yeah,
with the same voice and everything, and basically the same character. It's basically the same character as Ash from Alien. It's just
right. Did I hear they brought back
a copy?
What's his face? Who plays the one from Prometheus? Oh god, I can't remember his name. Played Magneto in the more recent.
Yeah, he's not in it.
Okay, Fassbender. That's it.
Fassbender. Yeah. No, instead they do. At least that actor is still alive. Presumably they couldn't have got him, but. Yeah, it was a bit unnecessary. I wouldn't have minded if it was like one scene, but like, he kept cropping up throughout, and I don't know, it's annoying.
How do you reckon they did his voice? Do you reckon they got a sound alike, or if it was AI voice? That's like murky water, right, for a dead actor. Because
in the Alien where he's like he's a synth and he's like torn apart, or he's right, and then when she reboots him, right? And then when he's speaking, he's got that like weird roboty voice on top.
Yeah.
So it's all like that because when they find him in this film, he's already torn apart. So that's their excuse for him.
Oh, I thought it would be in like another model of the same synth, right? Like
it is, but it's a different one who's been torn apart.
Oh, he's also been torn apart.
Yeah, he's also been torn apart. Yeah, it's just retreading everything, like to the point where there's one line and it's like, why? People literally laughed in the cinema. I was sitting at home when we were like, wah, wah. when they used that stupid line. Oh, God. Anyway. But like the cast was good. Like I say, the production design was really good. But it's just a rehash. Just watch Alien. There's no point. Anyway, never mind.
I finished watching Fallout, and they say war.
Me too.
War never changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Multiple times in that last episode.
Yeah, but Fallout is cheesy by nature.
Sure. I
think they had to do that.
I had a similar problem. Well, no. I didn't really have the same problem as the Acolyte with Fallout. I think last time I said I was in the process of falling off it. But they did bring it together in that last episode. Like, it does tie up its ends, or at least the whole comes together in a way.
Reasonably well.
Yeah, pretty neatly. And, the tease at the end is cool.
And the tease is cool, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping they dial back a little bit, because, like, I think it started with a bit more humor than where it ended. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a sort of understanding that the Fallout world is a bit inherently stupid.
Yeah, it's dumb.
And they played into that and made it a little bit funny. And then just as the series, and as the series went on, they sort of do the thing that I dislike with a lot of comedy films, and that becomes not the focus, right? They're like not necessarily the focus, but it just becomes less of a thing over time. Almost all comedy films follow that model, right? All the good jokes are right at the start, or like the density of jokes is like in the first half an hour.
Why is that? Like, if you watch Airplane or something, you don't have that problem.
No, it's because like films still want to have plot, and in order to make the plot feel meaningful, that has to take over. Like Pixar films do it, Disney films do it. Like it's just anything with a jokey slant.
See, that's why Airplane is so good, because it's actually...
Because it never stops, yeah. And to a certain extent, Austin Powers, right? Austin Powers is good in that way as well.
And Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Because Airplane, like, the plot is lifted from like an actual 1950s, like, airplane disaster film. And then they just layer jokes over the entire thing. And, like, same with Austin Powers, is just a plot of a James Bond movie. But
maybe that's why then. Because they're parodies, they don't need to worry about the plot because everyone already knows the plot.
Yeah,
it's true.
Because as much as I love Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like it kind of falls into this trap as well. The joke density decreases over time
because they have to start fighting.
Because they have to start doing more fights and bigger fights, and
the fake out at the end of Scott Pilgrim, it's funny, but if I forget about it, every time I'm like, it's like stand up for yet another fight at the end or whatever, and it's a fake out because that's the joke, isn't it? That they're actually, he's like friends with himself or whatever at the end. Himself or whatever. But when that happens and it looks like there's going to be another fight, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
And then they don't.
Yeah. And then they don't. But still, there's still a feeling of like, oh,
it's like I'm tired now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially as it doesn't help that the structure of that film means the chaos theatre sequence is kind of done twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, sure, but at least it makes sense in context.
It does, yeah.
But that is probably the climax is kind of the least fun part of the film.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame, but yeah. But exactly, it's that exact thing.
You should have gone with the video game version where Mega Gideon turns up and
right.
It's real anime.
That would have been so weird. Like I never actually finished reading the comics. Like so I actually don't know if the comics go Mega Gideon either. Like because I assume that's where the game got that from.
Is it?
Because the game is more, even though it's Universal made and all that stuff. I think the game follows the comics more than it does the film.
I forget in the game, but is that actually in subspace as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Because that would be how you'd excuse it. Obviously,
yeah,
it's a mind battle.
we can just make anything. Films. Yeah, I hope Fallout goes back to there's one scene in that thing that really sort of like made Gnome a bit squeamish and a bit squirm, and like I think you can think which one, but it's the one that like hangs in my head a little bit as well, and it's just like, oh, that didn't even need to be there. Why did so they just put
like a gory thing?
Kinda. It's more conceptually gory than it is actually visually gory.
Right.
And like, and it's just like, oh, that didn't have to be there. There was no need for that.
Except for it being a reference to the games, I suppose.
Oh, I don't even know. That's the thing. As someone who's not really played any of the modern Fallout games, I don't...
Yeah, well, that's why you wouldn't know.
No, I don't
Because if you played, for example, Fallout 3 and just VATS crit hit everyone every time, then
sure. Yeah, yes, it does that gore, right? Everything just explodes all the time. That's its gore style.
Yeah. But, you can't do that in a TV thing. You have to tone it down a little bit.
I don't really. But no, everyone explodes all the time.
They're not meant to explode unless you're vatsing them. Well, no, I suppose they still do, kind of.
They haven't gone into whether VATS is a concept in the show. Like, it's not really a...
Well, they have a Pip-Boy, right?
Yeah. Pretty much everyone has Pip-Boys, but... Or, the Vault Dwellers have Pip-Boys, yes. But... I mean, most of the explosions just come from the ghoul's gun, which seems ludicrously powerful.
Right. Well, I mean, that is kind of why you get that effect in the Fallout games when you're using a really powerful gun.
I love how that he just has perfect aim and he just knows the exact spot to just completely negate the power armor.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that is their representation of VATS, because that is how you would do it in the game. You shoot the fuel cell and then it just falls out, and then it forces the person inside the power arm to get out, and then you shoot them.
Yeah, that wasn't the trick.
That would have made a lot more sense.
It would have made a lot more sense. Yeah.
It does make much sense.
It's not
in the
like
game,
they haven't established that there was a fuel cell, because that was a plot point. That this fuel cell got stolen.
Well, a fusion core.
Fusion core thing. Yeah. There were a lot of MacGuffins going on.
Yeah, fair few.
Yes, that whole system in the game didn't really make much sense. I mean, for a start, a lot of the things that supposedly have, fusion core powered, you shoot them and they fucking explode. But if you shoot the fusion core in a power armor, it just pops out, completely the same as the power armor. And then the person inside the power armor really awkwardly has to climb out of it, and then at which point you're just shooting them in the face.
Yeah, they changed that for the show.
Yes. Unsurprising. In the show, does every single wrecked car explode with a nuclear explosion if anyone shoots it?
No, I don't think a single car explodes.
Well, they missed the trick there then.
That's probably coming. It's probably coming.
These old wrecked cars that have been sitting there exposed for 50 odd years or whatever, or even longer. I forget how long the time counts. That are all atomic powered and somehow still have the fuel in them, presumably.
Yeah. It's only 200 years, right? Is that enough of a period of time for the half-life to have whittled down enough?
For the less directly hit areas. There's still plenty of radioactive places in Fallout.
No, I meant the fuel, the half-life of the fuel in the cars.
Well, the fuel doesn't really decay like that, I guess. It's the decay products that decay. I guess I don't know what the supposed fuel inside the fusion cells actually is. I don't think I've ever read whatever. I'm sure it says somewhere in the ridiculous amount of random text logs that you read in Fallout. Probably even go to a factory that makes them at some point, I would bet.
Probably.
As someone who doesn't know the lore and just is trying to follow the logic of the show, that was a bit weird. How is this spoilers? I don't know, but the
almost certainly yes. But
okay,
spoiler warning, spoiler warning. Let's do it.
But the MacGuffin at the thing that the faction wanted was cold fusion, right? That was what.
Yes,
and that was what the whole MacGuffin throughout the show was. This is the power to achieve this, and yet the freaking fusion core thing that powers the suit, it seems to be powerful enough to power a whole vault or something. It's they already have this awesome tiny
a single one of them somehow does it, right?
It's why is it so cool that they managed to get the thing at the end when they already have this tiny battery that seems to be able to power a whole vault? It's that.
Wow. What is in theory powering a whole dead city? That's the idea of scale there is a bit different, but.
Yeah, so I don't know why they were so excited. I guess at the end, this was totally didn't make sense, but when she plugged in the cold fusion, all the lights of the totally nuked Los Angeles lit up somehow. Yeah. The entire electricity grid is totally fine for some reason. Yeah, that's still good.
Maybe it's more they were trying to get it because they would then be able to make more, essentially. Because presumably no one knows how to make fusion cores any longer, because that's kind of how it is in Fallout. They're a thing you have to scavenge, and so presumably there's a limited supply that is gradually going to run out.
And the Brotherhood of Steel just have enough to power all their armor.
Yeah.
Does seem overkill, doesn't it?
Anyway, I didn't quite get that.
Yes, I agree. Well, I don't know what cold fusion means to the Fallout universe. If it's even
it seems like the fusion cores would be cold fusion, right?
Yeah.
They don't seem like they're particularly hot.
No.
Unless that's the trick. Maybe this plot line is, we discovered how to make them again.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Rediscovered. Okay.
Yeah.
Or that mysterious organization for whoever the doctor and Dogmeat worked for. I don't even know who that was.
When I'm watching these shows, is it did I miss something, or is it just not clear? Sometimes I'm was I just looking at my phone when they explained this or something?
No, I don't think they explained it.
Right.
Because I don't know the context from the games either. For if this sort of version of the tech is even in the games, I've got no idea.
It's even in the game, yeah. Fallout.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good show. I wouldn't call it great, but it was good.
No, 3 stars.
That sounds a little harsh. Yeah.
Solid 3 stars.
Thumb fresh.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Yeah, swimming in sevens. Yeah, swimming in sevens. That's okay. Any other random going on? Anything else anecdotal? I tell you what I did do. Like, I mean, I went on holiday to Somerset, and but I haven't really got much to talk about that from there. I mean, I went to the Haynes Motor Museum, saw some cars. Cars are cool. That was fun. The bit I wanted to talk about is I had my first Taco Bell.
Okay.
Oh.
Disappointment in your voice there, Dan. You're like, oh.
Well, I don't know. I like, that's not something I ever wanted to try particularly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it doesn't. Like, I really want to try an In-N-Out burger, but I don't really have an interest in Taco Bell. Like, just looking at the US menu or whatever, it doesn't look appealing to me when there's like nice Tex-Mex food in the world.
Oh, sure.
Anyway,
I mean, there's two sort of takeaways. See what I did there. From my experience with the Taco Bell. One, it was at a service station, so naturally it was expensive, but Taco Bell stuff is way smaller than I was expecting.
Well, that's like every fast food, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, way smaller. Like, so, like, when there's a meal on the board and I was like, there's like, oh, that's got like 2 tacos. It's like, and I'm thinking of like the old El Paso kits, right, where they're like pretty big ass tacos.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're like half the size, and it's like suddenly this 2 taco meal doesn't seem like such a good deal anymore.
Well, I mean, that's why there's 2, right?
Yeah.
2 makes up the size of one normal taco.
The tiny.
But that doesn't seem like there's multiple chains like in London that do like either a burrito or 3 tacos, right, with the soft tacos.
Right, yeah. I went for the crispy ones, but they looked like the same size as the soft tacos. Yeah.
And this is why I have no interest in Taco Bell, because there are so many nice options. Like there's tortilla. What's the one in Angel that I go to? But
yeah, I suppose if you're in Cambridge, you'd go to Nana Mexico.
Right, Nana Mexico. I mean, that's a great. I love a Nana Mexico.
Nana Mexico is excellent.
Yeah.
I don't even. Someone suggested that it might not even exist anymore, or at least one of the stores that doesn't exist, something like that.
I think it moved location or something. It's definitely still around.
Good, because that place rocked. Good quesadillas. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it tasted fine. It tasted pretty good, in fact. But I wouldn't say it tasted too different from if you made an old El Paso kit at home.
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. Gnome had a burrito, which I think was a more successful meal. The burrito was still quite small. It was about the size of like one of those like £1 McDonald's wraps, which like kind of cements my problem with the value proposition here. Like that also wasn't very big. It was tastier than the tacos because I had a bite and that was all right. But I'm gonna sort of caveat all of this was like this was Motorway Services Taco Bell, so you know there's a considerable price hike on it than normal. So when that Taco Bell does eventually open in Ipswich, which apparently the plan is back on, guys. We're getting a Taco Bell. We'll have to see what their realistic prices are to see if it's even worthwhile. But yeah, good enough food, just too expensive. Just far too expensive for what it was. Paprika chips were nice. They don't describe them as that; they just describe them as fries. But then you have them; they're like absolutely covered in some paprika mix, and it's like that's quite delicious.
Just
like we used to do.
Yeah, basically, just chuck everything.
Maybe I'll try it then. I think there's one in Finsbury Park I could walk to in like 10 minutes. Maybe I'll give Taco Bell a go.
I mean, that's just that was the novelty of it. It was just like, oh, there's one here. Let's shall we? Shall we see? So there you go. I've done it. Box ticked.
So
I'd still have a Macca's or a BK or a KFC over it, I think.
So it's ranked at least 4th.
The problem with as I say, it's dependent on that price tag. Depends what happens in the real thing, but whether or not it makes it competitive or not. But at the moment it doesn't seem competitive in my estimations. Food news.
So in random national news, apparently, I don't know if you've been watching the news over the past week. but my 10-year-old story of corporate fraud now has quite a dramatic ending, which I was not expecting. Yeah, but yes, this is the same guy. But from my first tech job in Cambridge, Mike Lynch was on the board of my company, Investor. And because it was like a machine learning company, it was like AI before people called it AI, I guess. And that's what his company had done, Autonomy. And when I joined that startup, he'd already left Autonomy, and he was investing in these startups. So mine was one of them. Another one was, which you'll know if you watch F1, Dark Trace, right?
Yeah.
So my company and Dark Trace.
I always want to say like a Garth Marenghi.
Dark Trace. Garth Marenghi's Dark Trace. Yeah, basically. So we were in the same office, like, because he put us in his like incubator at Space or whatever, which was on the West Cambridge site by the Cavendish lab, the physics lab.
What did you just say? The cannabis lab?
Cavendish.
Oh, Cavendish. Okay, sorry.
I don't know if they grow cannabis in the Cavendish, but maybe they do. But that's the physics lab at the University of Cambridge, the Cavendish. Because originally, our first office, when I first was there, it was like 2 doors down from Nana Mexico on St. Andrews Street. But then we went to the West Cambridge site, which there was a van. I think Nana Mexico would come. I think it was Nana Mexico. They would come in a van to the West Cambridge site. So some days
I remember you telling me about
Nana
this.
Mexico.
Yeah,
get quesadillas from.
Excellent.
That was delish. But of course, famously, they sold Autonomy to Hewlett Packard, and then they were using the money they got out of that deal. I think he personally made like £700 million or something, which is quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I was in this incubator thing, and the CFO of Autonomy, like the whole leadership team of Autonomy left after they'd sold it, being like, HP are running this into the ground. They're rubbish. We're leaving. We're going to do our own thing. And they were like investing in these things like my company and Dark Trace. And so they were like around, like you'd see that the CFO, his name was Sushavan Hussain. He used to come in and monitor. One time I had to go into a meeting. I was like a junior, obviously I just started my career, and they made me like give a presentation to this guy or whatever. And he was really rude and a dickhead about it. Basically the only person in my entire career who's been rude to me in a meeting, that bad to me in a meeting. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he ended up in prison because, of course, Hewlett Packard came out and said, well, you sold it to us for 11 billion, but you'd been like creative with the accounting, let's say.
Right.
And it's actually only worth, so they wrote down the value to like 8 billion. And then said it was a big swizz, and like it was a conspiracy to defraud HP, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a lot. It was a lot of money. It was like 4 billion or something.
Yeah.
And so I've been following the story ever since. So they got Shushavan extradited, because originally it was like the Serious Fraud Office came in the UK, and it was the Department of Justice in the US, because Hewlett Packard's a US company.
Sure. Yeah.
Obviously, because their thing was like, they made those crappy printers, right? And like not very good desktop machines in the 90s. And that wasn't working out so well for them. So they were like, some CEO got in, took over and was like, we're going to pivot. We'll dispense with the hardware, which is all they really did. Hewlett Packard is all they were, the crappy printers.
Sure.
And it's like, no, we'll be a software company.
Yeah, and laptops. They still make laptops.
Yeah, laptops. But they were like, we'll pivot. Everyone's doing software now. So we'll be a software company. We'll be innovative. And what we'll do is we'll buy this British like AI company. I mean, no one called it AI at the time. And that will like boost us towards this. And then it all went wrong when it turned out to be fraud.
Great.
And then Deloitte were the auditors.
Okay.
Were supposed to check the books and check that it was all above board. So they screwed up, and like everyone on the Deloitte side that was involved with that got all their heads rolled. Anyway, and so Shushavan got extradited to the US and was tried and convicted and put in prison. And then here in the UK, there was a civil case. So Hewlett Packard brought a civil case against Mike Lynch, like in the High Court.
Okay.
and that took 5 years, something, and he lost that. But like the damages, I think Hewlett Packard were asking for like $5 billion, and they or something really high. I can't remember the number; it was very high, but there was no way they were actually going to get that extracted.
Sure.
So they lost the case, but they only had to pay back much less damages and it was just civil case, so it wasn't criminal. The criminal case was going to be in the US, and the US were trying to extradite Mike Lynch, so that he could be tried in the US. And that took, just to get the agreement to extradite him, that battle took like 7 years or something.
Right.
8 years until... it was this whole, he had all this legal team in the UK trying to make the case that it was unfair that he should be extradited to the US, and the extradition agreement is all unjust, and all of this stuff. And eventually, the Home Secretary
he could leverage some of that. That's like, hey, I've already had a case against me, and
exactly
for a similar
it's
thing,
like,
and it didn't go that way. So why were they doing it again over there?
Well, he lost the civil case, so. Maybe that's
sorry,
why.
I thought you said the other way around. I thought you said HP lost. Right, yeah, okay.
No, he lost the civil case. HP won the civil case. But finally, it went through multiple Tory Home Secretaries, and Priti Patel, I think, eventually signed off, yeah, okay, he can be extradited.
Wait, she did something useful and not at all controversial?
I think it was Priti Patel. So eventually, after the appeal process and all of this stuff, meanwhile, he's got that 700 million quid,
sure.
And he's swanning around super rich, investing in Darktrace and, doing his thing.
Right, that's what I was wondering, because he could just, knowing he's going to lose it all, just blow it all. I'm going to enjoy this 10 years while it lasts.
Well, exactly. I mean, my mum saw him at the opera, I think, in the Royal Opera House. It's he was having a nice life, living it up. But anyway, eventually ended up in San Francisco under house arrest, under armed guard. And the criminal trial finally happened in the US, and he won. He got acquitted. He was pronounced innocent.
Weird.
That was in July, or a few months ago, and I thought, wow, that's the end of that. After being following this for over 10 years now, all of this intrigue and all of this stuff, all this story I've been telling, and that's finally the end. Is he finally got away with it with his high-priced lawyers?
Well,
and then something else happened.
I mean, normally when you're following a case this high profile and something else happens, it's usually something completely different, possibly involving girls.
Right. So you've seen this, right? What happened?
No. Proceed.
Yeah,
I've sort of I've heard the outskirts of it. Do explain. Explain it properly.
So this week, and this was national news, I think, because it's the summer and there's nothing going on, so the news needs something to report on. But basically, with his millions and millions of pounds, having been pronounced innocent, he went on a celebratory cruise in his giant $18 million luxury sailing yacht.
Okay.
It's the biggest luxury sailing yacht in the world that he bought, and it's cool.
I bet Bezos wasn't happy about that. It's how dare he have the biggest yacht?
Well, it's not the biggest yacht, but it's the biggest sailing yacht.
Okay.
The biggest yacht is is it Bezos? Or I think there's that Paul Allen, isn't there? Has a huge one. The Microsoft guy. I think he died, didn't he? But there's some massive yachts, but this is a sailing yacht. It has the tallest mast of a yacht in the world or something.
Compensating.
Anyway, and he called it the Bayesian because that was the technique. These days AI is all deep neural networks.
Sure.
But at the time he was using, autonomy was based on something called Bayesian inference, named after this English mathematician called Bayes, Thomas Bayes.
Okay. I was about to say not connected to the Bezier curve then. Sounded pretty similar.
It's Bayes, who's English. I think Bezier was
sounds French, doesn't it? Yeah.
Swiss or something. But yeah, because the joke was always that they would say that all your bays are belong to us, right?
Lol.
Anyway, so this yacht is called the Bayesian, and so he went on this cruise in the Mediterranean to celebrate that he was innocent after all. They'd gotten away with it, and yeah, it was anchored off the coast of Sicily, and there was a storm, and there was a freak water spout downspurt or something, and it capsized and sank in 15 minutes.
Oh dear!
And he drowned. And
wait, what? Really?
Yeah, he's dead. And his 18-year-old daughter.
Oh man, okay.
Yeah,
probably several other people as well. Also,
5 people drowned.
Yowza. Okay.
15 people got off the boat onto the life raft, but apparently they don't know exactly what's happened, or they think there's some kind of negligence. Hatches were open and stuff. He probably shouldn't have been, moored there.
Right.
The local fishermen are like, we would never have gone out in that. It looked
in that
bad.
storm.
Like,
yeah,
this was not safe. But yeah, it capsized and sank in like 15 minutes. And that's the end.
That's not what I had thought I'd heard. I thought it was just
so that's what's been in the news this whole week, is that this yacht has sunk. Yeah. So,
well,
there you go.
Yeah, I'd vaguely heard that part. I didn't realize he had died. Jeez. Okay.
He drowned, and so did someone very high up in Morgan Stanley. I think a lot of his legal team were with him and stuff. Some of them celebrating.
I mean,
and yeah, just absolute freak weather event. Hoisted by his own $18 million petard, basically.
I mean, maybe it's just because they're rich and that's how the news works. The new must have news reports about rich people.
Well, I think it was,
but is there? I do wonder if there is a legit correlation between rich people and dying due to accidents and freak conditions, right? It does seem like considerably higher, and I'm wondering if that's just because their lifestyle lets them do stuff that is inherently more dangerous.
Like a normal person is in an airliner, a rich person is in a private jet. They've got to be more dangerous, right? Or like they have very powerful cars and stuff, right? A normal person wouldn't be able to afford. Of course, it's more dangerous.
Or helicopters, or
helicopters, exactly. I was thinking about that. Like they definitely do things on average that are inherently more dangerous.
Or buy tickets to an experimental submarine.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's also the other part of that is that it's all private. Like, it's not a huge company that has a bunch of regulations or whatever necessarily. Sure. I mean, some of the same regulations, obviously, but
exactly. I mean, obviously there are maritime regulations, but like the manufacturers of the yacht are like trying to make sure that the public know that it's not their fault, right? Yeah. So they're saying about all the procedures that were not correctly followed.
We made the yacht to be used like this, but he didn't do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it won't be him.
Well, not him personally.
No, it'll be his crew.
Yeah.
Well, unless he told his crew, hey, take the afternoon off, guys. You're good.
He just didn't like the way they were doing something, so he told them to stop it, even though it was a thing that was like necessary.
Yeah, we'll never know. We'll never know that.
And I think the reason it's on the news is not necessarily just because of rich people, but because it's British nationals in a foreign country dying. That's always a standard news thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I've never. It's always been a bit of a struggle with myself, like when that mentality to news broadcasting. When they say this terrible thing happened. And 2 Brits were on board. A bit like that.
Yeah, I know.
That sort of has a bit of a triggering effect for me. And I'm like, that's not... It's a terrible thing. I don't necessarily care how many Brits were involved. It's just people, right? People should be people. And I get some people have argued with me about this over the years. And it's like, okay, I get the corollary, the corollary or the alternative argument where it's like, okay, they say that because just in case anyone knows someone that might have been there to be like, oh God, I need to make sure they're okay, kind of thing.
Sure. I think a lot of people feel the way you do. I certainly do. About that specifically.
It comes across as nationalist rather than caring, like the right response. Yeah. But maybe that's just the way it's said. I don't know.
But it is also literally just like space filler news.
Yeah, kind of.
Because they've wheeled out the old line, because I've been hearing this for 10 years, but most people have never heard of Mike Lynch. And the way the news says it is they try to explain it and they're like, oh, he's like Britain's Bill Gates. And he's like, he clearly isn't.
No.
Like Bill Gates is a household name.
Has he had any significant impact? Like, I don't know. No.
I mean, you could argue that autonomy and stuff he's had an impact in the world of machine learning, which now, of course, is very important. But you can't compare it with fucking Microsoft Windows or whatever. Can you?
And OpenAI.
Close.
Yeah.
But I suppose it does highlight that Britain does not have significant software companies.
Not
because
of its own. I mean,
of its own.
I mean, there are British software companies that are world leaders in various things, but not like, but in their own little niche. That's what I would say.
Exactly.
Like,
and that's
we don't have mega corps.
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, we have ARM. That's not a software company, but that is very important.
Sure.
But of course, I don't know who owns it now. At one point, it was the Japanese bought it, and then I don't know who owns it now. But anyway, that is a British company that's actually incredibly important. It's just that people don't realize that, like, the chip in their phone was substantially designed in Britain.
Yeah, but it's ARM is more of a licensing thing, isn't it? It's like they design the stuff, but they don't necessarily actually sell it themselves. They give it to someone else. Like, hence why like ARM-based chips like Qualcomm, Snapdragons and things like that. It's like they're Qualcomm chips. Like,
people will maybe know that name because they know that's what's in their phone.
Yeah,
or they know they've got an Apple phone with an A15 Bionic or whatever the hell. But what they don't realize is substantially designed in Britain. But that's the most significant one, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, for my line of work, I'm like associated with companies like Speechmatics, who are world leaders in speech recognition algorithms and things like that. You know, as I say, we have niched companies, but
indeed,
not anything you'd necessarily. No household names, I suppose. ARM is the closest.
Exactly. Anyway,
Dyson.
So now I thought it was
Does
already
Dyson
dramatic. No, I don't know. It's
not really like,
but Dyson,
yeah.
And Dyson is fucking overblown. But anyway, never mind. All I say here, standing in front of my Dyson fan, sitting, in front of my Dyson fan with my Dyson Hoover. Anyway, vacuum cleaner. Sorry, I should probably just.
We've got engineering firms like Bose and Meridian, I guess.
Well, we've got Rolls-Royce. That's the big engineering firm, right?
Boeing. Did Boeing used to be British? Oh, no, I'm thinking of
fully American.
No, I think I'm thinking of Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, our biggest aerospace contribution is whatever part of Airbus, but Airbus is mostly French, I think. But it's European, isn't it? Like Airbus is like multinational.
The podcast about video games.
Big one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We have serious contributors to the world of video games.
That's true. We are somewhat outsized in our
Guildford, like the hotspot of video
Guildford.
Games for some reason.
I mean, not quite to the extent of like Japan. Now they really have outsized influence in the world.
Did you see the terrible news?
I mean, I bet I know what's coming.
Yep. Peter Molyneux is back.
He's back. Yep. Gamescom. News.
He wasn't on that yacht. He's all right.
Yeah, he was not on a yacht. Peter Molyneux is back. Not only is he back, he was on stage at Gamescom.
Announcing a game.
Announcing a game
that's not Fable, but it kind of is.
Well, yeah. So he the pitch for Masters of Albion, as it's called, isn't Albion the name of the world?
Yep.
In Fable? I don't know that he can do that.
Of course he can. That's just the name of a place.
Yeah, but it's IP owned by Microsoft.
It's the mythical name of Britain.
Yeah,
also, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
fine.
Like from King Arthur and shit, isn't it?
It's public domain, clearly.
Fine. Okay. That makes a bit more sense. So he himself described. He actually came out with not so much in the way of like his old fervor. Like he wasn't like over promising too much. He wasn't. He wasn't like completely like just. So he didn't say anything outlandish, is what I would say. He did go and say like, well, I've been after all that time I spent mucking about on mobile, and he actually just went, what was I thinking? Like on stage, like even he recognised that was madness, which is kind of fun. He's like he said, he's basically blending like some of the stuff he's loved from his previous games. Like he started with mentioning Dungeon Keeper, and then went on to being like, yeah, there's a bit of black and white in this.
Just named all the games he made.
Yeah. But he's trying to say this is like we're bringing what Lionhead was known for back like as much as possible, and then we got to see it. And it looks pretty. I gotta be honest, it looks pretty ropey. It's like I don't know. It looks unfinished, like clearly unfinished.
Right.
Like maybe this was too early to start showing it, but it kind of looks like a how do you describe this? It's a little bit like tower defensey in the sense that you're building a settlement by day, but you have the ability to really micromanage things. Was kind of its thing. Like,
so that's the Molyneux part then.
Theme park, I guess, right? It was because isn't Molyneux from that lineage as well?
I don't remember.
The sort of bullfrog era.
Yeah, he made theme park.
So like the micromanagement stuff is there, like to the point where it's like you literally build the food people eat. Like, here's all the ingredients, put it together, and you can make things. And you were saying, like, if you want, you can make rat sandwiches. That's totally fine.
So that's not going to be in the game, basically. This is the Molyneux part of this presentation.
Maybe.
Where he's claiming that there's going to be this ridiculous detail and it's just not actually going to exist.
But it seems kind of like critical to the game because
I'm sure.
Because later on it moved on and they were talking about like at night it becomes tower defense and your heroes have to then sort of like protect the village against oncoming monsters and stuff like that. And the dungeon keeper part comes into play there, where you take control of a dude. You know, you can possess a dude and then control it yourself. Some might argue the weakest part of dungeon keeper, but hey, it's there. And then the black and white bit comes and be like, and it's like, yeah, our hero's clearly struggling. We'll just switch back to God mode, which your cursor is a big hand.
Naturally.
And we'll cast some stuff and just start burninating it all.
Do you get to do gestures?
I didn't see the gestures, no.
At least those would probably work nowadays.
And I didn't see a little devil and a little cloud guy either. And then they were going on to like, well, clearly that means we need to upgrade our equipment. So let's give our hero a sword. And then they go to the process of like, right, let's make the handle for the sword. Let's make the hilt. Now let's make the blade. And instead he puts a baguette on instead of a blade. And it's like, well, it'll kind of work, but like it would be better if we had a proper blade. So yeah, I guess that's their thing. It's like the high level of customization is what this game's trick is.
Yes, but that's the trouble.
Whether that translates to actual good gameplay or not, I don't know, because like I was immediately thinking, it's like, well, you could give your people rat sandwiches, but they're not going to like it, so give them food. And,
well, I think
and it's presumably that's part of the challenge in some levels, right, where you're limited on what you can provide.
But the trouble with a trick like that is that it's like the infinite complexity problem, where it's just like if you've got the more parts you make, the more different options there are, which just doesn't, like, that's too much work.
Yeah. How is it going to simplify down to, presumably that's what it's going to have to do, right? It's like you promise big, but ultimately there are limited systems underneath that are powering it.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does that boil backwards?
Not everything is actually going to be viable or matter.
Yeah.
And therefore it will not actually exist in the end because...
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would I make my shield out of a pizza? Like... I bet you could do that.
But that is a very Peter Molyneux kind of thing to talk up.
That you do, yeah. Well, yes.
You can attach anything to anything. Why? Because I want you to.
Yeah. I didn't see any cubes to click, though.
Not yet. That'll be the third part of the game when you get to, like, the reward for the town event will be some kind of chest, but except the chest just has, like, a layer of crap on it that you have to poke to make it fall off.
That would be pretty funny. Like, even if you just put that in there as an Easter egg, that would be pretty funny. Yeah, so I would say it's an oddly understated presentation for Molyneux, and the game itself, as I said, didn't. It looks early. He did say they're working with a small team, like about 20 people, something like that, which is a small team for modern games, and also implied that he brought some of the old band back together.
Naturally.
And it's like, well, these guys, no offense, these guys are going to be quite old now. And it's like, I don't know how much of a difference and how long have they been out of the video game?
Do they have any like actually useful knowledge any longer? Is it all super outdated?
I mean, presumably their design chops matter.
Well,
but like,
but not any programming at this point, probably.
Who knows? I'm not one to judge, but
unless they want to try and make the game in assembly or something.
Mad skills. Molyneux's back, everyone.
Yep.
Do we have to say it like Peter Molyneux? Skeletori? I don't know.
Bubbles.
Is there going to be a song about sailing the ocean, having the ocean to sail the
probably.
ocean?
I still have that in my head after
I know.
20 years.
It just always comes up.
So annoying.
Till we get some wood.
I finally. Oh, God. So, what else is going on? Civilization 7 news.
What else happened at Gamescom? Civ 7 was there.
Civ 7. So we know
yeah.
some stuff about the gameplay of Civ 7.
I mean, it looks a lot like a Civ game. Is all I could really take away
So
from
what's
it.
the big change? The big change is the biggest one is the ages thing, where if you play a full game of Civilization, you go through 3 big ages, and each of them you switch civilizations. That's the new thing.
Oh,
so a bit like the real world, the ancient Greeks are gone, or the Romans are gone, and then you have the English.
Oh, I see. So it's not like like the modern day ones are going up against the ancient ones in a weird sort of amalgamation at the start.
So the weird part of that, like history wise, is you keep the leader. So you have one leader, you pick one leader, and they take you through 3 civilizations throughout the game.
Oh, does that mean you're going to get them dressed up in their suitable outfits? Like if you start as the Romans,
I don't know.
Like Caesar, and then he gets like a bowler cap or something when you get to the industrial age.
Because it also means that Caesar is now civilization agnostic, so you can have Caesar running the United States in the modern era.
Interesting.
Whatever, if you want. But I guess the idea is, and they explained it a little bit from some of their videos, is that means they can now balance the civilizations per era or age.
And not make them civilizations that have bonus units that only exist right at the start of the game, and then nothing happens for them after that point.
Exactly.
Like the Romans.
So that's like a double good thing potentially if it works, right?
But I kind of always liked that weirdness. It's like that you have one chariot still hanging about. But
you can still play Civ 6, right?
Yeah.
If you want. So
that was a very Don Matrix thing to say. It's like, we've got a product for you. It's called the Xbox 360.
So you have phones.
So I think that sounds potentially cool. I think that they've also bundled up barbarians and city states into one thing, which are free peoples or whatever.
I guess that sort of makes sense. That really should have been how it always was. Barbarian, if you left a barbarian camp alone long enough in the early game, it should have just turned into a city state.
They should have evolved, yeah.
So that's good. I like the streamlining of that. So cool. The art style, kind of like it. I mean,
it's pretty generic looking. I mean, it looked nice, like all the close-ups nice and stuff. Enough. They've done the obvious upscale, I suppose, of how Civ has kind of always looked, I guess, but it doesn't. I feel like there's less characterization in the leaders, right? Because that's the thing they want. That's where their character seems to lie in these games. Is how they portray them.
That's true.
I don't know. It felt very straight-laced, but I actually don't necessarily mind that in Civ. Civ is kind of a straight-laced game, and it's probably better if it's straight rather than overly. You don't want it looking like 2 Point, I guess, is what I mean.
No,
2 Point. It has its place.
And then there's a lot of. I'm sure there's a lot of depth, but the immediate thing for the combat is they've got commanders who let you stack, so you can pack up all your. So it keeps the thing where units take up a tile each, right? Which was kind of. But allows you to create a stack of boom based around a leader and then unpack them, so you can move through a mountain pass with a whole army on one tile. I mean, that and then unpack
was
them
how
for
it
combat.
worked in Civ 5, right?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
It might not have been it might have been 2 units under a commander, but you used to be able to stack something.
Yeah, there was a certain level of this, but I think maybe this is just they've gone a bit further with it. So that means you can have an army hanging around on one tile, or ready for use, and it's not taking up half your thing. That
seems kind of weird. I feel like they should. That's a system that could have had other solutions, supply lines or something. You build a special road upgrade that lets units stack on top of each other there, but only in military formation, as part of your war effort. So,
I see what you mean. Yeah, so if you have a decent road network, they're allowed to traverse on that stacked.
Well, or you like it's a specific upgrade for part of the road network, but then it could like be disrupted by enemies.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the city district stuff is kept, but it's toned down, I think. So now, because in the old days, like it was like the city was on one tile and everything grew on that. And then in Civ 6, it really, you put lots of districts on multiple tiles surrounding the city, and it kind of expanded out. So you place certain buildings, right? Like not just wonders, but like, this is the military camp or whatever on different tiles around the city. And that made it look cool at the end, but I don't know, you ran out of space quite fast. But it seems like it's kind of halfway now where there's basically two kinds, instead of all the different kinds of district, there's like two kinds of tile for the city, which is like urban tiles and country and rural tiles. I don't quite understand it, but I think they've streamlined it, that stuff. Which
so when you say place a building, it's basically just going to allocate it to some of your urban zone or something like.
I think so.
Be like
it's not.
I wondered if they were going to like just sub-segregate the hexes, right, and be like, oh, there's like 3 spots inside every hex or something where you could place stuff.
Not that I saw, but
so they would grow. They would still grow, but they would grow slower to remove some of the space problem. But then the space problem is in itself like a strategy thing, right? Because it's like it would force your decisions.
Yeah, because if you put certain districts on certain spots, they'd have different bonuses based on the resources and like the niceness of the area or whatever, the breathtakingness of it or whatever. They also now have towns, so they're like, I think they can become cities, but one of the advantages is, well, not advantages, but like they don't have their own individual build queues, I don't think. So you don't have to manage, you can expand your empire with more settlements without having to manage 50 build queues.
Yeah, I quite like that idea. That sort of borrows from like Catan and like, where you sort of, well, not the build queue thing, but I like the idea of having to invest to push a new settlement to the next level somehow, rather than it just being an organic growth thing.
Into So I quite like that idea because
it's another decision in the mix.
Yeah, because that's what I don't like. Just going into the longer game of Civ is when you have a lot of cities, you have a lot of build queues, and you're making decisions, and they don't have a lot of impact. It's just like, oh god, does this one need a granary? Oh, for fuck's sake. I don't know. I find that because you're making the same decisions over and over again. Like obviously there's likely that you make different choices based on what you need overall and what that particular city needs in terms of its food and population and resources and stuff, but you're still like making, I don't know if you find this, Zach, but you're still kind of making a lot of the same choices repeatedly throughout a game.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, like it's presumably the path you take to get a city
up and running.
Yeah, you always take the same. Yeah, what you think is the optimal path, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends slightly on that city's circumstances, and obviously you are also trying to service your overall goal. So obviously towards the end, if you're going for a science victory, you have to build all of the stuff you need. But still, I don't find that like a fun turn just going around.
Sure. Yeah.
All the city build queues.
Although it had become a bit more streamlined, right, than it used to, because it wouldn't suggest you do things unless the queue was empty.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If you just stepped through it, like, what else have I got to do?
And obviously, slightly older take on that, but like as soon as they introduced the fact that there was a queue, right, you could just be like, I'm going to just queue up 10 things and I don't have to worry about it for like 50 turns.
Yeah, the game will warn me when the queue's when the queue's done.
Yeah, that is good. Anyway, I'm sort of quietly optimistic about it, hopeful.
Sure. I don't think I've necessarily got a feel for like the classic Civ thing though, right? Like
how much has been taken out?
How much has been taken out with future expansions in mind, yeah.
I did hear that, is it? Oh yeah, natural disasters was like a really loved mechanic from one of the expansions from Civ 6, so it's in the base game this time.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I think they have even said it's like they're aware that that's
oh yeah,
that's the thought process people have. It's like, yeah, don't get it on launch. Wait for the expansions, and that they are trying to break that a bit.
Sure.
To be like, well, we'll put in what everyone likes, and then we'll put in
Yeah. People like, I think there's no religion victory condition, which I think is good.
Oh, there we go. Well, that'll be an expansion. There you go. The faith victory will be an expansion then.
And I think like religion has more impact in certain ages, like in the middle age, it's more important.
Oh, interesting.
Which makes sense.
Well,
so,
sense is not the right way, but like historically accurate potentially. I guess.
Sure.
Alrighty. Following on from this, there was a very brief look at. I mean, I didn't go away and watch the Xbox live streams where they went into stuff much more detail, but Ara was there. The competitor.
Yes.
I didn't really get a feel at all. It looks quite. I don't know what it was. Something about that trailer made it look more civvy than their previous looks at Ara. Like, a lot of the shots were more zoomed out rather than like the up close stuff they'd shown before. You know what I mean? Like when they were talking about was it cougars or something being a huge problem they had to unbalance or rebalance. I didn't learn anything from what they showed. It was just like, yeah, Ara's still coming. I guess they had to counter program against Civ 7. So there's that. What else happened? Is anyone excited for a new Borderlands game?
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean,
it's been a while since I played one. That's one point in its favour, I suppose.
Sure.
Because I skipped all the ones that I thought were bad.
I mean, we stopped at 2, right?
Yep.
So, and there's been the pre-sequel since then.
And 3.
And 3.
Obviously.
Yeah. So we've only played half the mainline Borderlands games.
But the pre-sequel always seemed like it was just a 2 expansion, really.
Kind of, yeah. It's a sort of standalone. And I suppose if you wanted to really throw this into the mix, we could put Wonderlands in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we haven't played many. I mean, I think Carl Bosman summed it in the recent Borderlands film flop up quite well in that, like, Borderlands is just a fun game with guns. Like, it doesn't really have anything else. So it's like, when they announce another Borderlands, it's just like, cool, what are the guns mental? Check. All right, I'm in. Like, that's kind of all that game really is.
Well,
right?
I mean, the thing about that is, it's like, that's actually all you want it to be.
Yeah.
You don't want them to try and force their dumb bullshit story too hard.
No, that was
like, it's fine to have the dumb bullshit story, but like, they haven't detected where like the cringe level is.
No, they've never nailed that. Like Borderlands 2, Borderlands 2 was fun, but I think I played Borderlands 1 to death, but I don't think I ever finished Borderlands 2.
Well, it was a lot more effort.
Yeah. I don't think that we ever got there. And also, the only thing I ever wanted more from those games was like, okay, how much more mental can you make these guns?
Yeah,
I just want the mechanics to go. If there's any franchise that could do this, Borderlands could just go absolutely wild with what things are and what they do. And, and at least in those first 2 games, like there was some wild stuff, but it was like not. There was never quite as much as you wanted.
Well, the trouble was that, like, a lot of the really wild stuff was just, like, one-off special guns that weren't actually useful.
Yeah, or their functionality wasn't in the pool.
Yeah,
right?
And their random cool thing wasn't just, like, a random piece that you could get on other guns. It was only for that one special gun.
I mean, there should have been, like, some sort of system where, like, once you discovered... Perhaps you go through the special mission to get the guns that do the special thing, but then from that point onwards, it's like what you're actually doing is unlocking
the ability for that to appear,
to be in the pool a bit.
Yeah. I mean, that is like, in the very late game of when I got like super far into the later parts of Borderlands 2, it does get more crazy, but not in a not the guns get crazy. It's just that your stats get so high that it gets crazy. Which is like when I spec'd so super hard into the SMG that the fire rate was insane, but I also had gigantic clips, so it's like millions of bullets, and it's just the hit numbers are flying off so ridiculously, and I'm specking so much like elemental damage. It's like that's kind of cool, but like to get there in that game, there was like the long period where nothing much changed because it's just like the stats were slowly increasing.
I think I might have screwed myself with Borderlands 2 a little bit as well, because I was 0, right? My main character was 0.
Yeah.
Which isn't my normal play style, really.
Stealth melee.
Yeah.
Well, that was
it had some fun elements to it, but it's like if you know, it kind of flies contrary to everything I've just said, right? It's like I want the fun big guns, and it's to play a character that's less about the big guns was probably an error.
Yeah, I mean, Stealth Zero would be like that would be an opportunity to have that work better in a more modern game. If you like, if that concept had existed in like the Titanfall engine,
sure, yeah, I was about to say,
so you could have much better movement, to just maneuver around,
and just a wider variety of fun melee abilities, right? And maybe that's hampered by the first person nature of the game, and even though some abilities didn't like pull the camera out, I forget exactly, but there'd be tricks around it now. People have shown that's a doable thing. But
that's why that was weird, because it's like that game wasn't about melee.
No,
it was about guns.
No, because like what's the only other thing you could do? You could Hyrule Warriors that, right, and go mad in that way. But then that's a whole nother system. Although that would be wild, right? If you combine the two, like you have like the insanity of the Age of Calamity move sets, but like alongside people where the other move sets are the guns.
Maybe
that could be mental. I guess that's what Marvel Rivals is.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see if they've managed to make a like modern game at this point.
Yeah,
because I mean, Borderlands 2 is not a modern game by any account. Like that movement system is like so stiff. If you go back to it,
is it?
It's just like, you know, the jump is just like a precise arc with virtually no air control, and you're like, that's old school.
I don't necessarily mind a bit of that. You know me, I'm old school.
Well, sure, we're used to it, but like, there's, you know, there wasn't even mantling. That's how old that game is.
Does 3 have any of that?
I don't know.
No.
I mean, if it didn't have it, it was probably intentional at that point.
I can take it. I don't need mantling.
Sure, you don't need it, but it feels weird to go back to that kind of extremely old school stuff. It's like playing Half-Life again, for example.
Do you remember when that was like, they made such a big deal of that in Halo 5? Like in all the talk before it, it was just like, we've got mantle.
Well, that is the point, though, isn't it? Because like Halo was the same. It felt the same always. That same like floaty ass jump, and like everything was very stiff in that way.
Yeah, and then they sped everything up. That was what Halo 5 did, right?
It
kind of changed the moveset.
Tried to Gears of War it up a bit.
No, not Gears. Gears is the opposite. Gears is still the slowest ass.
Well, it's slow, but it's not like clunk. Well, no, it's clunky in a different way, but it's not like that way of stiffness. Gears of War at least feels like Gears of War feels like actual people moving around in some ways.
Yeah, and I like just apart from the to cover slide, which has always looked insane.
And apart from, you know, real people being able to move at all in those bits of armor.
Yeah.
That is not canonically power armor as far as we know.
No. Well, you've seen the size of their biceps, right? Everyone is hench.
Clearly just that they're not actually humans.
No. Just pumped full of muscle. It's Marcus's tomatoes. That's what it is.
Clearly.
Man, I'm actually quite excited for E-Day when that comes out. I know that's a way off, but like I'm ready for another Gears. especially one that's trying to be old Gears. I'm ready for it. What else we got? Yeah, Marvel Rivals, I've sort of mentioned a couple of times. That game looks pretty good. Looks like Overwatch in a good way. The movesets look pretty varied because, you're playing characters that don't use guns in quite a lot of cases. I suppose they were showing off Captain America and Bucky, the Winter Soldier. This thing, and Winter Soldier's thing basically seems to be jump into the air, slam to the ground, bounce back up into the air, slam to the ground again, just bunny hop your way, causing destruction. That looked to be the mechanic for him. Whereas Captain America, I suppose, was a bit gun-like because he can throw his shield. You just have to wait for it to come back when you throw it. I don't know. That game's looking better every time I see it. Looks quite fun. And they also put the tag on it, hey, it's free to play with all heroes unlocked at launch. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean that the heroes later that you introduce later are going to be paid for? Is that how you just sucker everyone in at the start and then make any additional content paid for?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it an entirely aesthetic for money concept?
Both of those things.
Yeah, is it Fortnite, basically? So they're pushing they feel like they're pushing the right buttons right now. I don't know. There's no $40 entrance fee. I'm looking at you, Concord.
Well, I mean, that is maybe their other problem, though. They're releasing into a market that people are already claiming that they've done with.
Yeah, I think you could argue the hero shooter. We talked about this before, right? Yeah. The hero shooter is the current battle royale, right? It feels like it's on the downturn.
Feels like anyone doing it at this point is too late.
Deadlock.
Yeah.
So there's that. That showed up. On the Netflix are making a video game out of Squid Game. Except it's Fall Guys. It's basically Fall Guys. They've cartooned it up and made it. Which just feels so tonally weird to me.
Well, but there's already been I think maybe even 2 indie games that are basically that exact same concept. It's Squid Games, but we've made it less brutal, I guess.
Sure, just less real.
But that concept has already been done, I think, I would say.
Yeah.
By the indie space.
It's just obviously Netflix has a bit of, it has the Squid Game.
Yes, it has an actual license.
Yeah. And, the games they showed were sort of based off games from the show.
Mm.
So, but obviously expanded and made a bit more mental. But I hope they kind of stick to the mentality that if you mess up, though, it's that's it, you're out. It's not a bit of me wants it to be oh, okay, that's the differentiator between it and Fall Guys. There is no respawning. It's just if you're dead, you're dead. That's it. You've done it. Start again.
Well, I mean, you mean within the context of one level, not because obviously if you go out in Fall Guys, you're out of the stream.
Yeah, you have to be out of the stage though. If you fell off the level,
that's what I mean.
You still respawn.
It's not the matter of failing the platforming; it's not getting through it fast enough or whatever. Right, in Fall Guys.
Yeah, it's depending on the level, it's kind of race mechanics, isn't it, most of the time? But I kind of want it to be if you F up, that's it, you're done. Because then it's like Squid Game. You're actually dead. And it would be. I know that's not the model they want because aesthetics, right? It would be really funny if it just rolled you a random character every time. They'd be like, "No, that guy died."
Right, XCOM.
Yeah, I guess. So there's that. They had Troy Baker talking about Indiana Jones in a pretty boring trailer. Honestly, you didn't really learn anything from it. Just Troy Baker talking about Indiana Jones and how much he's oh my god, I can't believe I'm playing Indiana Jones. I love Indy growing up as a child. Now I'm Indiana Jones. Oh my god, it was all that kind of was. The reveal was though is that hey, this is another one of those games that Microsoft is not limiting to Xbox. It is coming to PlayStation 5 next year.
Oh,
it's also that.
Cool.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? But the slightly unexpected, I guess. The Xbox version is still coming out December this year, but early next year, the PS5 version is coming. So it's not like it's a whole year's delay. I had anticipated things like this would happen in. I kind of didn't. I don't think that would have been an unreasonable choice. A little bit like how Sony is delaying the PC releases of its games for the most part. Like, I would have thought Xbox would have taken a similar strategy and been like, we'll put it out on Xbox first because Xbox, we kind of have to. And then, we'll put it on PlayStation later. Yeah.
Well, is this just some kind of like honeymoon period of the post-monopoly lawsuits area where they're like, we have to put these out everywhere real quick to make it look like we're not still making exclusives?
It's a very real possibility. Yeah. Although this is obviously not an Activision studio, it's part of the Bethesda acquisition. But like Machine Games, that was Bethesda right before. I think so. It's the Wolfenstein team, right? So anyway, that's interesting that's happening. I guess Microsoft's still experimenting a bit and caring about. Well, they're doubling down on what they've always said, right? It's like they don't care where you play their games, just as long as you play them. Which is a weird stance to take for a console manufacturer. Bring Game Pass to PlayStation, and we've come full circle. Then you don't have to buy an Xbox ever. Let's make it happen.
And then they just every 18 months raise the price.
Yes,
Game Pass by $1 a month, and then profit.
Yep. Man, if they can figure out how to get like non-streamed Game Pass onto Steam Deck, oh boy, they're onto a winner. Like Game Pass has the current problem where it's like it's the Windows walled garden, right, on PC because it has to run under UWP.
I mean, what's stopping Valve from launching a Game Pass?
That's a very good question. Yeah, what is stopping Valve from doing it?
Probably the fact that they'd have to somehow dig their ass through the millions of games on Steam to choose what to put in it.
Oh, absolutely. They'd have to curate the list, and then they'd have to go and do deals. It'll probably still be like a limited pool of like 100, 200 games, something like that. But
they must be thinking about that. It's the same as Netflix, isn't it?
Everyone's got to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because subscriptions, right? Can't have enough of them.
I mean, given people don't even play the games they buy on Steam.
Well, maybe that's actually a better deal for them.
That's why I picked up the Steam Deck, to try and encourage me to play more of my library rather than...
Well, also because you don't want to be sitting in here playing at your PC any longer currently.
Whilst I need a child to look over, because he's very annoying in this room. It's like, I love Miles to bits, but him in here is a bad idea.
I mean, so maybe Valve have done the maths and decided that people buying real full games that they don't buy even on sale actually makes them more money than if they were on a subscription.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe for now.
Yeah.
I bet they're waiting in the wings, so the moment someone tries it, they're like, well, you're crushed.
But then Valve also Valve are weird. They just sort of don't care, do they?
No.
Like if you... Presumably there must be some kickback from, say, when you buy a Humble Bundle that's filled with Steam keys.
Well, yeah, because the Steam keys are like generated on some back end somewhere that moves money around.
That must cost someone something.
Yeah.
I do generally just love Valve's mentality to the games industry, and which is pretty much do what you want. Pretty much, just like as long as you're buying stuff, do what you want.
Yeah, it's nice that they've succeeded with Steam Deck because obviously they wanted to. Because clearly, like Gabe got pissed off with Microsoft, his old company, at one point, and was like, we're going to make Linux gaming a thing, and did the whole Steam box thing, and it just didn't quite work. But now it's technically worked.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, it's still Windows technology, right? But through Wine and through Proton. But it's so it's in a weird spot, right? Like have they killed Windows gaming by effectively multi-platforming Windows gaming? It's strange. presumably Microsoft and that still need to build all the technology that this then inherits from. It's a weird place. It's a weird place. But I'm glad that it works. Anyway, there's only one other thing from Gamescom that I've got listed down here, and that is Secret Level, which isn't actually a game, but of note because it's an anthology series that's going to be coming to Amazon Prime by Blur Studio, or at least headed by Blur Studio, who have done this kind of thing before in the form of Love, Death and Robots for Netflix.
Right, which was very successful.
Yeah, there's some pretty spectacular stuff on there. But this is the trick this time is A, they can't call it Love, Death and Robots because, hey, it's Amazon this time, not Netflix. So it's got to change the name. But also, they're using video game IP in this thing. So it's an anthology of shorts based around real games. So there's Kratos in it. There's Pac-Man in it. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. I think Monster Hunter is in it as well. Keanu Reeves is in it.
Famous video game Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, exactly. This thing. I'm all for this because this team is clearly not just Blur Studio, who have obviously done video game cinematics for an incredibly long time and are incredibly good at it, but they're also just the Love, Death and Robots project showed they're very good at organizing or working with other teams to put together high quality little animations. I can't wait to see what this is. Sounds good. It sounds real good.
Sweet.
My buttons are pushed, and I am not even pushing any buttons watching this TV show. So that's what I got from Gamescom. Don't know if Zach, you saw anything else of interest?
No,
none at all. There was indie stuff hanging about, but I'm increasingly having a hard time discerning what trailers are actually for. Like you watch these things and it's just like, I don't know what the game is.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I came away from this ONL show just going, that was probably one of the most boring ONLs or one of the most boring press conferences I think I've ever actually watched. It had a Call of Duty campaign reveal, and it's like, well, that looks like a Call of Duty game. Skip. There just really wasn't anything interesting there. I'll probably play it because it'll be on Game Pass. Woo! But do you know what I mean? I sort of went into it thinking this doesn't. Maybe it's just this year, but it didn't feel like a very creative show. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, games industry.
Bad times.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep playing Ridge Racer. Screw you.
So creative.
Yeah. So that was Gamescom. I'm sure there's probably other stuff that I just haven't seen. There's an awful lot goes on, but not everything makes it into the show, right? So there's probably some other stuff hanging about that we'll see a bit more of later. In other news, Krafton, who I don't know, I keep hearing more and more about recently as a sort of publisher conglomerate. They have managed to somehow reopen Tango Gameworks after Microsoft shut them down earlier this year. And they are going about it with the intent of hiring the staff that were still available from Tango Gameworks, as in people that haven't got jobs elsewhere in the meantime. And they've acquired Hi-Fi Rush. So, Hi-Fi Rush 2, everybody!
Hooray! Not dead after all.
It's going to happen, yeah.
Phew, what a relief.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's just excellent in the perspective that someone else somewhere was just basically probably had the same reaction everyone else did. That was just sorry, what you're doing what now? You're getting rid of. Okay, you're getting rid of one of last year's most acclaimed games, but right. Then someone in power steps in and goes, yeah, we'll have that. So, good news!
Relief.
Hell, even if I mean it's going to be Hi-Fi Rush 2, because otherwise why would you have acquired that IP? But also, heck, that part of Tango Gameworks is clearly talented, so I'll be on board for whatever else they'd be making anyway. Or, I'd be interested to see what they're up to.
As long as those are the ones that they got.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's the risk, right? The guys that were probably like the names on that side of it, that unfortunately I don't know off the top of my head, but like the presumably the directors and stuff of Hi-Fi Rush aren't the people that came across, because they probably found work pretty easily.
Or we kept inside Microsoft, probably.
Yeah, like shuffled onto some other sub-team. Although I guess that's slightly trickier for Tango, because they're Japanese-based. Japan-based, for the most part. Anyway, that's all I got for news.
That is the news. And it's time for what you've been playing.
We've got like half an hour to go.
To tell us what you've been playing, Rob. Go.
Alrighty. Obviously, I haven't played a huge amount last couple weeks, because I basically took a whole week out. I wasn't really around video games. I went back and finished Immortals of Aveum. After the bug I discussed last time, I gave them a couple weeks to give me a suggestion on how to fix it. They did not, so I bit the bullet and restarted the chapter and went and redid everything that I hadn't done before. So I finished that. It kind of just ends, like, which was a bit of a shame. Like the actual ending to the story isn't as grand or as large as I was expecting. It was sort of building up to something, and then you get to the last fight, which is a fight you've sort of done before, which felt a bit weak. It's like, oh, what you mean there's no special, actual, unique boss here? It's like, oh no, we're just fighting this guy again. Well, of course, I guess. Has he got any new attacks? Oh, not really. Oh, okay. Well, that was pretty easy. And then it just sort of ends. Like, I don't know. It's like it wasn't a brilliant ending. And there's a few sort of like characters like it feels like they didn't get their just desserts or anything, that there isn't closure on every character, which I guess is sequel bait, I guess. We'll see whether that actually happens or not. But I did really enjoy my time actually playing Immortal. Was like I ended up having a pretty good time of it, especially even after I finished the story. I did the thing I don't normally do. I went back into it and basically did everything I missed. Like pretty much everything. Like I didn't go and hunt down every single chest in the game, which there's an achievement for. Although I was tempted, but that's actually just a whole lot of walking about and scouring every corner of thing. What I did do is go do all of the fanes that I mentioned before, the little challenge rooms. Did all of those. Also went and did all of the 6 count as the fanes. I bet the 6 are the really hard Magus fights. What are they called? Magus Magni? Oh, I get a bit lost in the terminology. But I went and did all of those, and those were kind of interesting because they were sort of unique. Like as in they took the Magni, the coloured Magni enemies or Magus enemies. I still can't remember which way it is, and changed them a bit or put them in environments or fights where things were a little bit tougher than normal. Such as the green mage fight where he can do a lot of area of effect damage, and there's all of the giant 100-foot tall enemies that come down periodically, so you've got to manage both the nasty guy that can do a lot of damage to you and what were boss characters, lots of them earlier in the game. That was kind of fun. And then I went and did the shatter fanes, which were the thing that screwed me up in the first place regarding that bug. They what caused the bug, as far as I can tell. But once I'd finished the game, it wasn't really a concern, so I went and did those. And those are also more combat encounters, but mixing things up a bit in fun and interesting ways. Like one of them is just it puts you on a really long, thin platform that gradually gets longer and longer as you go. But then enemies are placed on plinths away from you, so you've got to do lots of ranged attacks at you, and then they start running down the I don't know, just nice combinations of things to fight. They don't really add anything new, but they're just nice new combat scenarios within the mechanics of the game, and they all kind of work, and they all kind of provide their own little challenge. They're neat. They're not shrines. They're not as
right. Yeah, not as creative as that.
Not as creative as those, but there's a little bit to them, and then you do actually get a unique boss fight at the end of it. At the end of doing the Shatterfane stuff, so that was neat. A nice little bonus to end on. Yeah, Immortals of Aveum. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, Immortals of Aveum. What else did I do? I needed to, other than just the endless tinkering that I've basically been doing with the Steam Deck, I thought, you know what, I can actually try and sit down and play a game on this thing. So I played through all of Thomas Was Alone, of all things.
Not too much of a game.
It's not really a stress test, but
No.
It's a super ancient Mike Biffle indie game. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it is what it is. I think everyone knows what, it's a almost like Square's Teach platforming is kind of what it probably should be called. Like it's almost an introduction to platform games in some ways, with some basic puzzle elements that get slightly more complex and sometimes more annoying and sometimes more interesting than others. And there's about there's 110 levels in that thing in total, and they're all nice, like pretty short, snappy little things. And the sort of bite-sized nature of it, I think, is what keeps you going. But also, you've got the Danny Wallace. Is it Danny Wallace? I think it's Danny Wallace. Sort of voiced, sort of narrative to it all. That's actually, he does a pretty good job with that stuff, and it's
cool.
It's not super. I wouldn't call it a super deep story, but like it's fun hearing. Like it's almost told entirely through what the characters, what the rectangles think of each other, rather than the overarching plot. Which there is a sort of plot to it, but it also just sort of kind of ends. Like it's not
right.
It's not really about that, but it's charming, I guess, is what you would say. It's got a charm to it. So yeah, I'd only ever seen it because I basically tried getting Gnome to play it like over a decade ago. As a sort of like, here's an introduction to video games. Like here's a way to get used to platforming mechanics. And we never got too far into it. So like, yeah, this was my chance to actually revisit it, I guess. Achievements had been added to it since we first played it. That's how long ago it was. Like achievements didn't exist when I put on Steam. I don't think when I first played it. That's probably not true. But achievements didn't exist for this game, at least, when I first played it, when we first fired it up. So anyway, yeah, I did that, finished it, totaled it. Actually, I didn't total it. I'm missing one achievement. I got to go find a thing in a level somewhere that I missed. Because it's very simple. And nice. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing. I've been playing a lot of, I suppose the other thing I've been playing on my Steam Deck primarily is OutRun. Been playing quite a lot of OutRun 2006.
Brilliant. I'm glad that's holding your attention.
I mean, it's starting not to because, like, it's not a super deep game. It's a very well-made game, but it's not very deep. Like, there's a sort of grind, or like, I'm trying to do the coast-to-coast mission thing in it, which is like either a series of pretty simple races or the heart attack tree. So heart attack in OutRun is basically do the outrun as you would normally, but along the way your girlfriend is giving you instructions like hit all the cars, or don't hit the cars, or avoid the UFOs, run over ghosts. The usual stuff.
The normal things you do in cars.
Yeah. Watch out for that meteor shower. Dribble that giant beach ball. But the structure of that is kind of interesting because it's sort of, I think it exposes how that works in that, like, the instructions you get depend on how well you did on the previous stages. So if you're on a bit of a streak of high ranking stages, you get special request, and that special request will be a different set of instructions for that particular level. But there's also special request 2 if you keep that streak going. And I think there's special request 3 as well, but I've never had one of those. And the structure of it in Coast to Coast is basically make sure you get an average rank of A across every stage on the run, but not only every stage, but also every variant of the stage. So it kind of forces you to get the highest special request to unlock the levels. But once you've unlocked that, it unlocks everything under it, so you can just then go into that stage and just play that individual request. Any of the lower levels, I suppose. Problem is I haven't managed to get to any of the last levels with Special Request 3 active, so I've not been able to do that yet. And so my average is C at the moment, and I've done loads of runs on this now. It's quite tough. It's quite tough to get, actually. Or at least it takes ages. And that's just the first of the heart attack trees. There's 2 more. And I assume that mixes up what could possibly come up again. Like what the stages, the combinations of what it asks you to do per stage.
Right. Presumably, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a reasonable amount to it, but ultimately what you're doing is rerunning the OutRun again, like the Coast to Coast map over and over.
Yeah.
To try and get it. To try and do it better. Game. It's an arcade game. Yeah, you're trying to do it better. And I haven't quite got the skills together to get the best stuff just yet. But in the meantime, at least you're earning OutRun miles, which you can use to unlock more soundtrack, which is a bonus. There is one song in OutRun too that, like, other than all the classics, which I now also sort of know off by heart, but there's one that's got like lyrics in it that I just cannot get out of my head because it has the line, "This is paradise, it is very nice." And for some reason that just makes me laugh. Like,
it is very nice.
It is very nice. That's pretty much what I've been doing. The Steam Deck is very tinkerable, so I've been doing a lot of that rather than actually playing games on it. Like, it's just fun to mess with.
Tinkering,
yeah, or getting hold of.
What's been your experiments?
I don't know, messing around with like Decky. Decky is like a plug-in suite you can get hold of that sort of extends the Steam OS, the game mode of Steam OS. Let you put other plugins on top of it. So one of the things you can do is animation changer. Completely pointless because all it actually does is change the boot and suspend animations. But the community has made thousands of these things. So at the moment, my Steam Deck plays the intro to Frasier, but with the word Steam Deck put on screen instead.
What?
Because I just thought it was funny. And when I turn it off, the Untitled Goose Game, Goose just appears in the middle of the screen and goes honk. That's
perfect. I like that.
I've just been like changing these on a pretty regular basis. Like, for a while, I had the Cowboy Bebop intro, just like the first, like, until it says 3, 2, 1, let's jam, and then it just fades out. Like, or the Gandalf nodding to the Epic Sax guy is on there. And there's bucket loads of people that have remade the old console intros, but they've changed them. So instead of saying like PlayStation, it says Steam Deck or something. And or one of them is the GameCube intro, but it says Valve Gabe Cube, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah. The Gabe Gear.
The Gabe Gear.
I would definitely call it the Gabe Gear.
The Gabe Gear, yeah, that's pretty good.
I want to get a sticker that has those like 3 coloured, dots or whatever, like the Game Gear to go around.
Right, yeah.
Like a Game Gear skin for the
red, green, blue, or whatever. Gear. Yeah, that'd be neat. You could probably get D-Brand to make that for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I've been doing.
Cool.
Oh, I played a very brief bit of No Man's Sky just to try and make a bit of money out of my fleet, but that's all I've really done. I'm like getting closer to Atlas, I think, but
right.
I still don't understand the relationship between trying to get to the Atlas things and the purge counter going up. Because it's like every time you jump, like this counter goes up. And I'm like at 14 out of 16, I think. And it's like, well, what happens when I hit that? I'm not going to get all the Atlas nodes before that goes up.
Probably not anything important.
But like, I think to follow on from conversations we had a minute, I haven't found like any of those like frigate things. What is it? The salvage, the frigate salvage I needed for the
right.
for the frigate teleporty thing that I desperately wanted. But I've noticed that can turn up in missions.
Yeah.
So I've just been doing missions that offer those. And I finally bought the matter beam as an upgrade you can fit to your freighter. And then I kind of stopped because I haven't really experimented with how that actually works, how good it is. Like, if I could access all my storage containers from anywhere, that's great. That's a game changer.
Well, nearly. The freighter one is like way more powerful than the ship one for sure.
Right.
Because even that ship one just doesn't actually have that much range, considering how far away you can get from your ship. But the freighter one is like, as long as it's in the same star system, then you're pretty much good.
Cool. That's all I need. Yeah. Because you can summon your freighter to anywhere, so it's fine.
Well, unless it's a coloured star, of course, and then you need the hyperdrive upgrades for the freighter as well. I've never put those on my freighter because I never spend any time in colours. You only go there to get the different coloured star metals, and then you just leave.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that. But yeah, I never noticed the coloured stars thing.
It's because you have to have the special hyperdrive upgrades for your ship as well. So it's fine if you put those on your ship, you can warp there to get the star metal, but then is it really worth putting those hyperdrive upgrades on your freighter just so you can warp your freighter into that system, or do you just visit that system to get the stuff and then like jump in the space station teleporter to get out?
You teleport to your freighter.
Yeah, teleport back to your freighter wherever it is.
Yeah, I guess you could put up with it, but
there's not really there's no real reason to spend any special time in one of those systems over any other system. So you might as well just stick to the regular yellow star systems for general exploration and money making stuff.
I upgraded the class of my multi-tool, but I'm not really sure what it did.
Well, it upgrades the base stats.
Oh, okay, so it probably does a little bit more damage.
And also theoretically gives you another one of the overclock slots. But that's slightly weird because
I don't even know what the overclock slots are.
With those like ones that have like a purple glow around them.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't spot any of those.
But the thing about that is that like that system is kind of weird where each class upgrade increases the number of those slots that can exist. So it's like 4 at S class and then 3 at A class and then 2 at B class. But like where they are on the grid is based on the seed of the gun or whatever. But those can be slots that you haven't unlocked. So you might not actually have that slot to have the overcharged slot because it's somewhere on the grid that you haven't upgraded to yet.
Okay, right. Right, I see. Okay, I see. So I need to expand the functionality before I can even see potentially what I've done.
Yes, but if you already have 4 overclock slots on an S-class gun, you know that there's no need to expand any further to look for more because 4 is all you're ever going to have.
Okay.
Or if you're buying a gun, then you can already see however many that class of gun is meant to have. Then it's like, well, you know that they're all there and there's none hidden.
Right, yeah, okay. Helpful to know.
Helpful stuff that the game will never tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
That you'll only ever know from outside information.
And I went and looked at the Quicksilver thing you told me about as well.
Right, yeah.
Start the living ship thing?
Yeah.
That's more Quicksilver than I have.
Well, yes, obviously.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go do some Nexus stuff
But not too much. Well, I don't remember which storyline of the main storyline is the one that gives you the free little dribble of Quicksilver. But by the end of that, I think it gives you about half of what you need for the egg. But especially if you do the weekend specific missions,
right? That it does explicitly say are more valuable.
Yeah, those one give you quite a lot more. So I think I did 2 weekend missions and 1 normal Quicksilver mission. So that was all I needed to get enough on top of what I had from the main storyline to get the egg.
Well, I still got to bother to do those. I'll just focus about like just traveling to systems, get the Atlas thing done. Perhaps get the achievements for that, and then maybe move on to living ship.
Well, yeah, and also you will technically need to do that because you need the portal glyphs for that last step of the living ship where you have to use the portal network to go to a specific place.
Yeah, which I still can't remember any of that really. Unless that's what the purge countdown is. It's giving me the glyphs.
It might do when that countdown finishes. It might just give you them. Because I seem to remember the way it happens is after you hit a certain point in one of the storylines, I don't remember which one, but every jump after that, it just gives you another one of the glyphs until you have them all. And you may potentially
this might be the one. Then it's just not telling me it's the glyphs.
Maybe
it just says the purge 14 out of 16.
I mean, normally it'll be a pop up on in the middle of the screen that will tell you that you've just gained the glyph when you next load into the next system.
Oh, okay, that's not really worth it. I get a sort of transmission incoming data injection thing appear on screen, but doesn't tell me what.
Might be it. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been a while. But yeah. It is just you literally just have to jump and it just gives you another one. So It's not actually a difficult thing to get those at the end.
Okay, cool.
And you might have potentially even found some beforehand, depending on if you got incredibly lucky and found one of those traveller graves that are randomly on planets.
Travelling raves?
They're traveller graves.
Oh. I got excited there for a second. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. Tell us about some shapes.
Well, I don't need to tell you guys super much about Shapes because we made a video about it and that'll be on the YouTube channel soon.
Eventually, yeah.
But I can talk slightly more about the end game, I guess, because I got through. I guess I'm done with the main goals. So you have the milestone goals that are the big upgrades.
Shapes is a factory game.
Shapes is a factory game about making shapes.
About making shapes.
But you have the main milestone goals that are where the big upgrades come, where it's blueprints and trains and colours and all that stuff. And then you have parallel to that, you have tasks, which are just secondary goals, mainly just to fill time. So the game kind of explicitly tells you build the factory to make what the milestone requires, and then while you're waiting for your factory to make that stuff, work on making all the task things to get research points to unlock other tech. So, and it feels fairly well balanced in the speed of those, the amount of time you're going to be waiting for the main factory to make stuff. I mean, obviously you could just continue working on that and scale it up and make that happen faster if you wanted, but it feels like the sort of natural rate that you might do those at matches fairly well with how many side tasks there are alongside it.
Okay.
So I was going through them pretty much a lot, as they unlocked, I was getting to them. Essentially. But yeah, I finished all those. So I'm at the end stage of this first save where it's now it gives you 2 sets of goals that are the randomly generated ones. Which obviously you can either continue to just build factories yourself where it's look at what you need, then just make it, as you have done with all the previous tasks. Or you can, this is the point where you can do the make anything machine, where you just make a factory that can build anything automatically by receiving the signal that is that shape and then working out what it needs to do.
Interesting.
Which I did do in Shapes 1, but I've been finding significantly more difficult in Shapes 2 for a couple of reasons. One, which is a sort of good reason, and one which I think might be an early access reason and they might change. The sort of good reason is there's just actually more complicated things to do.
Sure.
Because
of the stacking thing? Or...
Well, no, stacking was always there, but there's an element of stacking, but in Shapes 1, the randomly generated ones were always just stacks of shapes, because that's all there was. But in Shapes 1, there was a sort of hidden mechanic which was used in the very late levels of making floating parts, which was really complicated because you had to basically you had to use sort of scaffolding parts that you then sliced off and got rid of to make the other part float in a position that you wouldn't normally be able to place it on just by stacking.
But would you cut everything off the bottom layer so it hovers?
No, you had to have the part sticking out over a half line and then discard that whole half and keep the half that has the bit that you want and then attach the other half of the shape you were trying to make.
I see.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
But
it would still hover in the middle layer.
Kind of, but you had to you had to do it in one step because it would unhover if you tried to output that shape in an invalid state.
Weird.
But yeah, now in Shapes 2, they sort of legitimize that mechanic they're called pins, which is basically an almost empty shit space, but it holds up the shape that's above it. But the way you make pins is you make them from below rather than stacking shapes from above. Okay. So it kind of changes the order you have to build in.
And you're doing doweling for cakes, basically.
Yeah, kind of. Pretty much. So yeah, the pins are another step to figure out
something from Bake Off.
Yeah. The pins are another step to figure out in your make anything machine, and then there's also crystals, which you use the paint to like fill in gaps or indeed fill in pins with color, and then it crystallizes. But those have the restriction that you can't drop them to stack onto something because that breaks the crystal.
Oh, wow.
And you also can't cut them in certain directions because that breaks the crystal as well. So my current, as I've been working on making this make anything machine, I think I've got to the point where it can probably output any shape that doesn't involve pins or crystals. Like if I just, because then you have these two sets of goals that are randomly generated, and I think that's intentional because one of them is like easy and one of them is harder. So the easy one at the moment just has regular grey shapes, and the hard one starts with crystals.
Okay.
So I could probably run the easy one on my current build, but I might try that and see if it even works. I think it should.
That sounds insanely complex to me.
Yes, it is. And you also have these, and so the other reason why it's even more complicated in Shapes 2 than Shapes 1 is you have the wire system that deals with all these signals, and like basically you start with a receiver that just gets the current goal shape. Then you have the virtual manipulation buildings which allow you to virtually manipulate that shape and also do things in reverse.
What does that mean?
Well, so you get the shape that you're trying to output as a signal, and then you can manipulate that signal with like virtual versions of the buildings you're doing, but in signal form, to like manipulate that shape to tell you what parts of it are. Like, so
so you can cut the fake shape.
Yeah, you can like unstack the fake shapes to see what it's made of, and then like rotate it so you can individually pick off each quarter.
And then you send just that part to the...
Yeah, and then you send those individual signals out to the different belts of your factory or whatever to turn them on and off.
Wow, so you're deconstructing to construct.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So that's what the problem with the wire system is. But then the thing that makes it more difficult in Shapes 2 is now that fluids are a separate thing, like they're actually fluids, rather than in Shapes 1 where they were just another item on a belt, there's no circuit control for fluids. So before in Shapes 1, you'd just control all the belts, whereas like if you needed a square that was pink, you'd just turn on the square belt and the pink belt. Whereas now, because you can't control the fluids, you just have to have all the different colours available and just send the square into the correct colour. Which means you kind of have to build all this excess factory that you didn't have to before, because you need to be able to send it to... You can't just send the right paint to the painting machine. You have to have all the different colours available at all times and just send the shapes to the right one. Which is why I feel like that may change in early access. I feel like that's just something they didn't implement yet.
Might be a signal to pick the colour. You mean?
Well, there already is a signal to pick the colour because you have to send it to the right colour machine.
Sure.
But I mean
But you mean like the single nozzle almost?
Well, I mean the pipe equivalent of the belt controller, basically, to turn on and off the pipes.
Okay.
So you can just like shut off all the other colours and just send the one colour to the machine. Then you'd only have to build one machine.
I guess you don't have to worry about cleaning the pipes because that really wouldn't work.
No, yeah.
It's like, oh crap, green wasn't even supposed to be here.
Yep. So yeah, that was my major problem. Where like
why is everything brown?
my current layout has like a lot of, it's like most of the volume of this thing that I'm trying to build is made up of the color factory because I can't control the colors individually in that way. You have to have whole trains bringing in every color, unload that, and then like. You have to basically have 8 duplicates of the colour painting factory for each of the different colours.
Right, yeah.
Well, 7 and uncoloured, I suppose.
Thank heavens for copy-paste?
Yeah, basically. But even then, trying to arrange them all so they fit on these like limited space platforms is kind of awkward.
Got more platforms.
Yeah, it's not actually that bad. You have a budget on how many platforms you can build, but obviously at this point you have tons. You have like 15,000 platforms or whatever, which you might need if you want to scale this up much, but I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I might not go all the way to pins and crystals in this version, mainly because this is only a normal grade factory. There's hard and insane factories,
God.
Which make it. I think hard is not actually any different. It's just like the shapes you have to make are slightly more complicated. Insane adds a 5th layer to the stack, so you can have stack them up even further. And then there's also a thing which I'm not sure if it's any more or less difficult, but it's hexagons where the shapes become hexagonal instead of quarters.
Oh, well, that sounds like a heck of a lot, an upgrade in complexity.
Well, it doesn't. I don't think it changes the grid of the factory. It only changes the shape of the shapes.
Right, but
so you're going to be rotating in like 30-degree steps or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But that sounds like quite a complexity upgrade.
Kind of, yeah. It will make it presumably because you have in standard you have 90-degree rotation and 180-degree rotation and 90 degrees anti-clockwise. Yeah. So presumably it's going to be 30-degree rotations and then 180, but then you will still need to get to 60.
Yeah, so you need 2 rotators.
And presumably when you cut it in half, obviously it will still cut it in half, but you'll have 3 different possibilities of that angle.
Nuts.
So yeah, after I finish this sort of basic make anything machine, I might just jump to hexagons just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, hexagons are the best of gods.
Yeah, evidently. I think it would have been cool if it did also make the grid hexagonal, but that would be a lot more work.
that would have been quite a lot of work.
Changing the game at that point.
Yeah.
That was Shapes. Video on YouTube soon.
Well, maybe not soon. We're still another Half-Life video to go up first.
And then the other thing I've been playing is just like a bunch more Terraria. We continued playing the modded Terraria run. And I think we sort of have gradually become more aware of a thing that's not even a problem with the mod. It's actually just a base Terraria problem, which is like a lot of the bosses aren't actually designed to work in multiplayer at all.
Right.
Not just because like they target one player a lot, like they tend to focus on one person, but like a lot of the attack patterns, where when it's like getting towards bullet hell-esque attacks, those are much more difficult to dodge if you're not the person that's being attacked, because when you're further away, it's just random at that point. It's just a random spew of stuff rather than patterns that you can see and then deal with. It was particularly noticeable on one of the late game bosses that does it creates like a line of daggers that then fire off, and it sort of looks like a kaleidoscopy kind of thing where you just see the lines where the daggers are going to go, but it creates like arcs of them, so it creates like a crossing point of the arc lines, which is, it looks fine when it's being targeted at you, but when it's not being targeted at you, it's just like, here's some lines coming in from off screen.
Yeah. Deal with it.
So yeah, and also obviously there's the pro element of the bosses not being really designed for multiplayer, where it's just like you can just respawn. As long as one person stays alive, the boss stays there.
Sure.
So if someone dies, it's just like, well, just don't die for the next 10 seconds and then I can come back and the boss won't despawn.
Yeah. So as long as someone's still in the fight's still on.
Yeah. So that. There was one particular boss that, thanks to the sort of lagginess I talked about before, that's not real lag, it's like game lag or whatever. There was one boss where I was just getting completely owned every time it switched target to me. I was just getting destroyed, and it's like, well, I'll just keep respawning, I guess. I think I died like 15 times in that one fight or whatever. It was because it was like it was a boss that like jumps up and stomps down, which with that lagginess makes it very difficult to see where it's actually going to land, and it like tracks you as you're moving, so its jump isn't like preset, it like hovers towards you essentially.
Okay.
Which makes it so you essentially have to just evade at the last possible second, which is very hard to do with that kind of lag. And also I think my loadout was slightly slower than the other person, so even when I was running at full speed in a straight line, it didn't quite let me slip out from under the landing strike.
Okay. Yeah.
I actually ended up having to use a gun that had knockback to like accelerate myself.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Which was kind of funny. But yeah, we're getting towards the last few bosses of that, I think. And, getting towards the really silly, ridiculous guns. The gun that I cut, well, for me, guns, I guess, other weapons for other people. But then the gun that I've just made is like a weird laser rifle that, when it hits people, it creates like a mini air of effect explosion. But if you fire it at a tile, it then becomes homing. So if you fire it at the ground, the laser just like loops onto the enemy, and it curves like a lot. It'll basically hit anything that's on the screen. So it's always better to like not shoot at the enemy, just shoot at the floor, and then it just auto locks onto whatever's in the vicinity.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of funny and looks pretty ridiculous. But yeah, and I also have like my most powerful weapon probably at the moment was like a Gauss rifle, which is just like a big shot that does single target damage, but it runs on like a battery charge rather than ammo. So you have to go and recharge it between fights, which was a problem when we kept failing a boss fight. And it's like, I have to go and recharge before we start this again. But like, the weird thing about that one was, even though it's called a Gauss rifle, it had like the projectile was actually really slow.
Oh, weird.
Which makes it kind of difficult to hit things with.
More of a torpedo launcher.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I did in Terraria, because obviously I can't just play one game of any game at one time, I have to play my own game on parallel in solo, because that's what I always do. So I've been playing Terraria by myself as well, regular Terraria, mainly because I looked at the achievements list and I was like, oh, I've got all the achievements. I can play in Terraria by myself and get some more of them. But the other thing that made that more viable was something that I hadn't tried before, is like what they call journey mode in Terraria, which is sort of like Terraria's version of creative mode, kind of. So it gives you basically a menu that lets you control a lot of stuff, like difficulty and like the time of day and how fast enemies spawn and all these kind of, the actual functions of the game. So that allows you to do a lot of, stuff that make the night last forever, because like a lot of bosses are time limited to only be fought at night. But if you're struggling with that, just set it to be night forever, and then the boss will never despawn. Right. So there's that. But the weird thing about journey mode that makes it more interesting than just being a straight creative mode is, in order to be able to get infinite items as you would in any other creative mode, you actually have to find them and like feed them into the research screen. So you actually have to basically unlock the ability to have an infinite copy of an item by finding that item first, and a certain number of that item depending on what type of item it is.
Right, because there's no crafting, I guess, is it? Or...
Well, there is. It's basically still the same game, but in order to unlock infinite sources of these items, you just feed them into the research screen. So for regular things like dirt or whatever, regular blocks, it's just like you need 400, but then you can have infinite. And then if it's like a weapon, then you only usually need one, which allows you to do more things that require... It sort of allows you to avoid the sort of randomness of Terraria, where it's just like, if there's 2 branches of upgrades that use the same weapon to start with, you only need one, because then you just clone another one. So it allows you to access more of the stuff a bit easier. And obviously it also saves you a lot of time when it's just like, if you want to make armor or whatever, you don't need to go mining forever. You only need to mine like 100 ore, and then you can just clone infinite ore.
Right.
So it basically removes a lot of the grinding of the progress of that game and makes it much easier to get through in that way, while still just being the actual game otherwise. Right, yeah. And also actually sort of weirdly more or better for like the customizability, because normally when you start a game in Terraria, you pick the difficulty and that is the difficulty of that world in the save file. But in journey mode, you can just change the difficulty on the fly. So I've been playing in expert mode on this journey save, but I can turn it up or down at whenever I want. So if I find that one of these bosses is too hard, it's just like, well, I can just switch it off expert mode and put it back to normal instead.
But will you though?
Well, ideally not. But the thing is, like, journey mode still lets you get all the achievements, because it is still like playing the game,
right? But
you just have this extra freedom to adjust it a bit more.
I think that's fair, because like, yeah, that all makes sense, because you're still, as you said, you're just taking the grind away.
Yeah,
really. Does that mean like the actual base building stuff isn't needed either? Like,
somewhat, you do still want to like get all the NPCs or whatever by building the houses for them to come to. So you still need them to be there, but you don't need to like farm the plants or anything. Because obviously once you've collected 25 plants and then you can just clone them.
And then you just get them, yeah.
You don't need to fish as much because it's like you fish up 3 of one type of fish and then you can clone that infinitely.
So is there an infinite system in the regular game then? Is this really the only thing that's slightly different?
No, that's kind of the only thing in terms of like how you play it. It's just the infinite resources. Because the thing about base Terraria in the normal save file is over time they made adjustments to it to make it more possible to avoid that like RNG screwing you aspect.
Right.
Like fishing. When you're fishing, you fish up crates and you can get crates that are specific to the biome you're fishing in.
You're not fishing for fish.
Well, sometimes you're fishing fish, but there's also crates.
Okay.
But you fish up a crate that's specific to the biome you're standing in, and then that crate has a random selection of contents, but those contents are like the stuff that you'd usually find in chests in that biome. So it allows you to get some of the stuff that there might only have been like one of in the whole world because there was only one of them randomly generated in this chest. You can just fish an infinite number of crates and then just have a chance to get that item that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get more than one of or whatever.
Who left all these crates?
Unknown. But yeah, so there are some elements in base Terraria where they've kind of over the years tried to work around that problem of maybe only one of these things spawned in the entire world and maybe you didn't even find it. But yeah, journey mode kind of makes that much more convenient. In fact, you can fish up 5 crates and then clone those infinitely. So you don't even have to fish that much. But yeah, I've been getting through that in parallel, which is also kind of weird because it's like one of the things that the mod version does to kind of combat that problem is let you craft a lot more things that are usually only enemy drops. So you usually get items like, well, there's a lot of them, but there's things like the items that protect you from certain debuffs. In base Terraria, those are all enemy drops. But in the modded version, you can eventually just craft them in case you never got that drop.
Okay.
So that's sort of its way of getting around that problem of potentially never finding the thing you wanted. So yeah, playing a lot more Terraria, but I don't know, that may not last another 2 weeks, I guess. Also, because it's nearly September and then Satisfactory will come out. Got to be done with this at some point soon.
Yeah, let's be prepared.
That's on the 10th, I believe. So that'll be after the next podcast, right?
The endless factory of factory games rolls on.
Yes, it will. It'll be just after.
Yes, so...
Oh, no, just... Yeah, just after.
So yeah.
Date math. I can't do date math quickly.
Won't be quite getting to the nenext factory game before the next podcast. So some more Terraria. And maybe some other stuff that I should get back to. Because Terraria has kind of overtaken everything else currently. That's what I've been doing.
Games. All the games.
You back to Zelda?
I haven't had time. But it's bank holiday tomorrow, so I've got an extra day. So I'm going to play some tomorrow. So that'll be good. Yeah.
See if you can finish it before I do.
I think that's unlikely, but let's see. You're making zero progress, so I'm still creeping ahead.
It is pure progress for you.
It's pure progress. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us for all of that. Lots of news this week. Unusual Gamescom, I guess.
Well, that's all you're getting for news until TGAs, I suppose.
Yeah, probably.
TGAs. So look forward to that. Yeah, as mentioned, there's a queue of videos on its way up to our YouTube channel, our Let's Play of Half-Life 2. And also look forward to that Shapes video coming soon after that discussion of how crazy that game gets. Shapes coming at you. Shapes into the everything.
I'm throwing some shapes.
Shapes in the hole.
Yeah. You're literally throwing shapes, but into a hole. No,
Universal game mechanic in action.
Indeed.
We'll be back.
Does anything ever come of the vortex? There's the mystery of what the vortex and why it is.
No, I don't think so.
Where does it power?
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever mentioned that.
Why does it hunger so?
How does it communicate what it needs?
Yeah.
In terms of shapes.
Does it spit one out? Just to be like, what more of this?
No, it's one way. It's a black hole.
Yeah.
No way out. Yeah, join us for another one of these in 2 weeks because we'll be back to record yet another Saladcast. So come back and listen to that.
Yeah.
But for now, we are signing off. Goodbye.